Last night, my spookies, Halloween took its final bow. But here at Weekly Spooky, we don't pack away the pumpkins. We keep the candles burning. Because tonight, on Dia de los Muertos, the dead aren't gone. They're just waiting to be heard. A small-town waitress falls for a charming stranger and learns some loves don't die, they linger. Two friends follow a mysterious boy to a house that refuses to let them leave. A first date turns into a race to help a ghost child find peace after centuries of silence. A scarred man makes a deal with a mischievous spirit, but the living may be the ones in danger. A group of boys summon something far darker than they ever imagined at the quarry, and it's hungry. A Father's Day séance calls up vengeance with a hatchet in hand. And by the water's edge, a drowned girl rises again at Langley Pond. And she's not done yet. 7 tales of love, death, and what lies between. So light your candles, my friends, and welcome the spirits, because here at Weekly Spooky, Halloween never ends. So, make sure you're subscribed. We'll have a lot of fun fear for the whole year, especially the holidays. Enjoy. Echoes. By Shane Migliavacca. I first met him last week, though I'd heard about the new guy in town before that. Castle, New York was the smallest of small towns. Word travels fast when somebody new moves to town. Travis looked like he stepped out of one of those 50s biker films, and last Thursday, when he walked into the diner I work at, I couldn't take my eyes off him, and he knew it. He caught me looking at him and smiled that sly smile of his. My eyes darted away and I tried to make it look like I was working around the diner, but it was too late. He strode over to me. "Hello there," he said. "Hey." I tried to sound confident, like I didn't give a fuck, but my voice cracked. He smiled at me. "Can I get a chocolate milkshake to go?" "Sure." I heard they're like, "Wow," here. I started making the shake as he leaned on the counter. He looked at his reflection in the glass case of donuts, adjusting his perfect hair. "Yeah, they're really good," I said, unsuccessfully thinking of something cool to say. "Lived here all your life?" he asked. "Unfortunately." "Ain't so bad. I've been to worse." I finished the shake and brought it over to him. He gave me a wink and took a sip. Before I could say anything, he slid a $10 bill across the counter. A large silver ring gleamed on his hand. He turned and started to leave. "Let me get your change." "The rest is for you, Dolly." I watched him go. Dolly? I felt a bit offended, but at the same time I was feeling something else. Love? Lust? Whatever it was, it made me somewhat forgiving of the Dolly remark. "So that's the new guy. Not bad." I turned and it was my coworker and friend Bren. She adjusted her raven hair. "What did he say to you, Ronnie?" "Nothing much, just wanted a milkshake." "Yeah, yours." We both laughed. Bren has this obnoxious laugh that usually ends up making me laugh even harder. The next day he didn't show up, but the day after that, he was there again. This time wanting a milkshake and a burger. No matter who waited on him, he always ended up talking to me, usually asking me about some town idiosyncrasy or whatnot, always coming in at the same time, every other day. It continued like this for a month. We'd small talk a little and then he'd leave. I never saw him outside of the diner. Then one day, he changed the routine. I got off work one sunny Monday afternoon and Travis was waiting for me. He was leaning ever so slightly against the side of the diner. He smiled at me. "Hey," I said. "Hey," he answered. He flicked out a metal lighter and lit a slim cigarette. "So what do you do for a kick around here?" "There's the movie theater or the bowling alley." No, you." He took a puff. Me? Not much." "Nah? Dang shame. Pretty little girl like you." Thanks." The flattery made me blush. Was he hitting on me? I sucked at this kind of thing. I wasn't sure if he wanted me to say anything. "I haven't found much in town to get excited about. Dullsville, really." He took a long drag on his cigarette. "So I was wondering if, you want to hang." I thought for a second. He's asking me out. I suck at dating. He's good looking and seems nice, but there's no way a date between us won't end in embarrassment for me, and perhaps him too. How can I talk him out of it? It's kind of been a rough day, you know? Mondays, I just want to go back home and chill. It don't have to be today. Oh, cool. So, want to see a flick? He said. Show the new guy the sights? Sure. Am I really going to do this? Yeah, I guess I was. Why not? I deserve some fun, right? Right. You do. Bren was always trying to get me to go out. This would really shock her. Tomorrow night good? I thought about it. Did you know I didn't have to work the day after? Sure. Aces. It's a date then. I'll let you pick the flick. Cool? Yeah. He looked at me. You should always have your hair like that. I touched my hair. I forgot I tied it back at work. This was probably the first time he saw it loose. It's so beautiful and red, like a rose. Thanks. My face lit up as I blushed. Great. Gotta run, babe. Be seeing you. He did a little point at me and winked before leaving, the spurs on the back of his cowboy boots jangling as he went. What had I got myself into? Our first date went well, as did the next 3. Before I realized it, we were a thing in town. I think Bren was jealous. For our 5th date, Travis wanted to take me on a picnic to Harmony Lake. It would be our first date in a less public space. I wasn't too worried. On every date, Travis had been quite the gentleman. I was getting ready in the apartment I share with Bren. I stood doing my hair, over and over again. You look good, let it go, she said. I turned from the mirror and presented myself. You think? I said, twirling around in my new dress. You're hideous. Hilarious. Seriously, hun, you look amazeballs. She hugged me. Have fun at the lake. Try not to get too lucky. Hey, it's been a while, but not that long. Travis picked me up in his 1957 Plymouth Fury. It was a convertible. The thing looked like a shark that decided to crawl out of the ocean and start looking for meals on land. He tooted the horn as he pulled up. You look stunning, babe, he said. Ever the gentleman, he wouldn't let me into the car unless he got out and opened the door for me. Some old song was playing on the car radio. In fact, I don't think he ever listened to anything after the 50s. We headed out of town as The King sang on the radio. I can't get over your car, Travis, I said. It looks so good for its age. I'd take care of this baby. Means a lot to me. Sentimental value. I keep her cherry. Try to get maximum performance. He steps on the gas and we're moving a little too fast through town. I look at him nervously as he speeds up. Don't sweat it, Rose. I got this. Travis had started calling me Rose. Honestly, I didn't mind. He took my hand. I think today is going to be special. The lake looked beautiful in the summer sun as we walked to a nice secluded spot under a large tree. Travis left the car radio on. Down in the willow garden, where me and my love did meet. He set down a large blanket. My dear, he said, ushering me to the blanket. We brought quite the selection of food. Travis popped open a bottle of wine. Was that weird for a picnic? He caught me making a face. Don't tell me you don't drink wine. No, just seems like a bit much for an afternoon picnic. Well, it's a celebration too, babe. It is? What are we celebrating? 5 dates. I laugh. Okay, I'll drink to that. My love, she did not know. The song played on as he poured us each a glass of wine. We eat, and I take a couple sips of wine. I haven't had much in the way of wine, but this is really good. I wonder where he dug it up around here. As we eat, we talk, mostly about me. He always has so many questions. Every time I ask him something about him, he seems sad, almost on the verge of tears. I don't want to bring up any bad memories. As we talk, my head starts to feel light, which was a dreadful sign. What's up, Ronnie? Wow, getting a head rush. I try to stand up, but my legs feel like rubber. Travis catches me as I come crashing back down. On the radio, the song keeps repeating. A dreadful sign. He brushes the hair out of my face and gives me a sad smile. I'm so sorry, doll. What? Sorry about... I stammer. My mouth doesn't want to move. I'm sorry. You have to die. All beauty must die. It's my curse. I summon up all my strength and push away from Travis. He tries to grab me and I scratch his face with my nails. Trying to stand again, I fall to my knees. The world begins shaking apart at the seams. My eyelids feel heavy. Every time I blink, it feels like it'll be my last. Maybe if I just sleep, it'll be better. I'll wake up from this nightmare. No, fight it. I start crawling on all fours, dragging myself, digging my nails into the ground. I have to get away, have to fight, have to get to the car. A dreadful sign. I see someone standing by Travis's car. I can't make them out. Why won't they? Help! Please! Rose, no one can help. I'm sorry. He grabs me by the leg, pulling me back. Travis turns me over, glaring at me. The scratches on his face aren't bleeding. I like playing with you, Rose, he said, but my dear, you're breaking my heart. Fuck you! I try to hit him, but I have no strength left. Why won't that person do something? He stands up, pulling a large knife from his leather jacket. I could gut you, but that's no fun. Not anymore. He looks at his reflection on the knife blade. He adjusts his hair. I used to find his vanity cute. Bastard. The poison isn't killing you, just making it hard for you to do anything. Why? Why not? I tried to move my head to see if that person was still standing there. A dreadful sign. Why is that song repeating? Is that an effect from the drugs? Travis notices me trying to look at the car. I can hear him talking to somebody, I think. Go away, he says. You're not welcome here. He turns the radio off. Who was that? Who was he talking to? After what seems like hours, Travis comes back holding a large cinder block and rope. Comfortable, doll? Go to hell, I manage, my mouth starting to fail me. Travis just laughs. Be right back. He walks off, carrying the cinder block and rope. My mind races. Move! Move! But I can't. It's physically impossible. I try to will myself, picturing my spirit leaving my body, flying over the trees, finding Bren or my folks, telling them what's happening here. If I want it strong enough, I can make it happen. Run! Flee! I will my spirit to soar! He comes back, standing over me. He reaches down and grabs my legs. Going for a little trip, my beautiful Rose? He drags me across the ground. I can see the grass ending as we go over a rocky area. But I can't feel any of it. I can't feel his hands on my legs, just a great numbness. We go up a small hill near the beach. He stops dragging me. We're here. We don't have much time left together. He kneels down and touches my face, wiping away my tears. He pulls out 2 coins and puts one on each of my eyes. I blink my eyes and they slide off. He gets frustrated. Why did you do that? They're for your journey over. He takes them and sticks them in one of my hands, balling it into a fist. I see the cinder block with the rope tied to it near my feet. He crawls over to it and ties the rope to my legs. No, he's gonna drown me. You've been a blast. He picks up the cinder block and walks to the edge of the hill overlooking the lake. I scream, but my throat fails me. I can barely make more than a crackling noise. He hefts the block up. He sighs, parting, sweet sorrow, and whatnot. He throws the block over the side and I can hear the rope quickly chasing after it, knowing that any second I'll be following it. And then I'm falling, followed by the slam of hitting the water. I sink, my lungs quickly filling with water. I welcome it. Please, let there be peace. I feel so tired. I just want it to be over. I can see the sunlight trickling down through the water. Darkness starts to creep into my vision until the light is swallowed by it. I wake, unable to move, my heart racing. Where am I? I'm in my room, laying on my bed. I hear a noise, a crackling hiss, almost like static. My eyes catch movement in the darkness. The thing nears the edge of my bed. My heart pounds faster and faster. Am I having a heart attack? A low whispering hiss comes from the shade at the foot of my bed. Not a dream. Heed the sign. And then the world went back to normal. I could move again. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. My heartbeat started to slow. I curled up in a ball on the bed, pulling the blankets over me. For the longest time, I didn't move, fearing that thing was waiting for me in the darkness. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep again. I woke and my room was lit by the light of early morning. Had it just been a dream? A nightmare? I get up, dangling my legs over the side of the bed. Was this all a nightmare brought on by being nervous over my big date with Travis? I stand in the shower, almost in a trance, as the water pours over me. I've taken plenty of showers before, but this just seems weird. The water feels like it's closing in on me. I hear the jarring sound of static. Through the shower curtain, I see a dark shape move. The thing from my nightmare. It's back for me. I back against the shower wall. The wet tiles are cold against my back. I run my hands over them, looking for escape. A voice snaps me back to reality. You almost done? Bren says, annoyance in her voice. Water will be freaking cold. Sorry, almost done. I hear the door slam shut. All dread has faded away, and I just feel like a shit for hogging the shower. I get out and dry off quick, trying not to waste any more time. I leave the bathroom, a towel wrapped around me. Bren is waiting for me by the door. You okay? Why? What were you doing in the shower so long? Daydreaming? Or a little pre-date gratification? I shoot her a look, and Bren does that laugh of hers. I'm sorry, Ronnie. I know you're all stressed. She gives me a kiss on the cheek and goes into the bathroom, shutting the door behind her. I hear the lock click. Guess I should have done that. At work, it's no easier. My mind drifts all day, thinking about our date this afternoon. The day moves in slow motion. What seemed like hours were, in fact, minutes when I looked at the clock, and everything I did at work seemed like the wrong thing. Giving people the wrong order, spilling drinks. I shouldn't be this stressed over a date. No, it was that dream, that nightmare. I consider calling the picnic off, but by the time my shift is over, I've reconsidered. Maybe I could turn this day around. When we get back to the apartment, I strip out of my waitress uniform and splash some water on my face. The water seems to engulf the room for the briefest of seconds, but the hallucination quickly fades. Am I losing my mind? The lake looked beautiful in the summer sun. We found a nice secluded spot under a large tree. Travis left the car nearby. He had the top down and the radio on. Down in the willow garden, where me and my love did meet. He sat down a large basket. My dear, he said, ushering me to the blanket with a wave of his hand. We'd brought quite the selection of food. Travis popped open a bottle of wine. Was that weird for a picnic? He caught me making a face. Have we done this before? Don't tell me you don't drink wine. No, just seems a bit much for a afternoon picnic. Well, it's a celebration too, babe. My love, she did not know. I put my hand up. I'm sorry, but I don't think I should. I'm feeling a little sick. Sick? Everything okay? I just had a rough night. Bad nightmare. He touches my hand. I don't know why this makes me flinch. He looks at me, puzzled. What kind of nightmare? I think I was drowning, and there was this figure there. When I woke up, I swear it was still there. You know, he starts pouring wine into the glasses. I think you need a little nip of wine, my rose. No, really, it's okay. It'll help your nerves. Okay, maybe just a little. Travis hands me one of the glasses. There's the sound of static cutting through the air, like someone's adjusting the radio. A dreadful sign. I look over at Travis's car and see it there. The thing from my nightmare. The glass of wine falls from my hand. It hits the ground, rolling and spilling all over the blanket. The song skips, or repeats. A dreadful sign. Not a dream, it said. Heed the sign. At first, I don't realize I'm screaming until I see Travis's face. He grimaces. He grabs me, clapping a hand over my mouth. He holds me so tight, I start to tear up. Shut the fuck up, would you? I try to pull away, but his hands are like iron clamps. I can see the anger in his eyes. He looks over to the thing standing next to the car. A dreadful sign. That's not going to help you, Ronnie, dear, he says, his voice never wavering. It's just an echo. As if robbed of its power, the thing evaporates into the air. He tightens his grip. Tears stream down my cheeks, soaking his hand. I see the wine bottle lying there, just out of reach of my free hand. I could hit him with it. Listen to yourself. You're gonna hit him? This is nuts. It has to be a game, right? No, it's not. I just need a weapon. To get away. I rake his face with my fingernails, scratching jagged lines down his face. For all the world, it sounded like running your nails over stone. He lets go of me, and I lunge for the wine bottle. As I reach for the bottle, he grabs me by the belt of my jeans. The bottle slips from my hands as he yanks me towards him, rolling just out of reach. I dig my feet and hands into the ground, pulling myself towards the bottle, the sun reflecting off of it. Like some magical weapon, it beckoned to me. My arms and legs burned as I strained. Almost. My fingers brushed off the smooth neck of the bottle. Why won't you let me help you? Travis says. Help me? I'm gonna free you of all this bullshit. I manage a last bit of strength and grab the goddamn bottle. I swing it and hit him square in the side of the head. Unlike in the movies, the bottle doesn't break. Travis lets go of me. I hit him again and again. The bottle doesn't break. He falls to the ground, momentarily stunned. I bring the bottle down again on his head for good measure. This time, it shatters. I turn and run for his car. As I reach the car, Travis appears, pulling a large knife from his leather jacket. I didn't want to make a mess, Rose. He touches the wounds on his face. Gonna have to fix these. I slide into the driver's seat. Yes, the keys are there. I start the car. It roars to life. I hit the gas, aiming right for Travis. This is insane. Am I in a never-ending nightmare? I ram into him, sending his body flying up onto the hood. He smashes through the windshield, his face contorted in a wicked smile. "Hold hands, you lovebirds," he says. The car plunges into the lake. Water rushes in as we sink. The nightmare. I'm going to drown here. With him. A shard of broken window floats by me as we sink down. I grab it. The jagged edges cut into my hand. I take it, jabbing it into his eye. He lets go of me. He smiles at me as I push him away. I swim through the open top. For however long I live, I don't think I'll ever forget that smile. The jagged shard embedded in his eye. Travis and his car sinking to the bottom. I pull myself onto the beach. I think I pass out for a while, lying there in the dirt, soaking wet. I wake with a start and see a shadow fall across me. I look up and see that thing, the thing from my nightmare standing over me. Its face and arms are blue and bloated. Its face, vaguely feminine. Its remaining hair, rotten, hangs down in long strands. It wore a dress. My dress.
Ghost Story by A.N. Onimus. I remember it as if it were yesterday. I was young. I was young enough to taste the adventure, but old enough to know better. I'm still not sure how this was real. Too much happened and was seen to be the fanciful imagination of being young. One thing is for certain. I have not forgotten what happened that night. And I am certain I never will. It was fall. The leaves were just starting to turn. The days were still warm and the nights were getting cooler. The county fair had been in full swing and was the last night it was open. I was there because a friend had talked me into going, and I wanted to sample some kettle corn and caramel apples there. I was waiting in line for the popcorn when we saw him. He was a boy about my age and my size. He looked like any other boy there, except his clothes were funny. He looked like he was dressed up in old-time movie clothes. He was looking at us. My friend nudged me and nodded in his direction. We exchanged looks and began to walk toward him. As we began to walk, to my surprise, so did he, directly for us, without looking away. When we were within speaking distance, I nodded and said, "Hey." He nodded back and said, "Hello, my name is Jonathan. I'm from here, but have been elsewhere for a while. I don't know anyone here now." I told him he could go with us if he wanted to. He nodded. We spent the next couple of hours riding the roller coaster, the Ferris wheel, and the tilt-a-whirl, after which I thought I might hurl, but I managed to keep things together. We had found a bench to sit. Jonathan and my friend were working on some red vines when he asked if we liked scary things. We looked at each other and said, "Of course," as if we would reply any other way. He asked if we knew where the house was, down on Oak Street. He said he knew the house that was spooky down there. I was hesitant, but after some encouragement from Jack, we were soon headed out the gates from the fair, into the night. As we made our way down through some neighborhood streets, it had really began to cool off, and there was definitely a chill in the air. A breeze was picking up, and a few leaves were blowing in between our feet as we walked. We were beginning to get far enough away from the fair now that I began to become uncomfortable with the distance, even though I knew where we were. It was just then when he said, "We're here." This had startled me as I realized we had all been walking in silence. A glance from Jack told me he was no more at ease than I was. I had this strange feeling of foreboding, and in retrospect, I know now that my survival instinct was trying to warn me. As I looked at him, he stood looking up at it. The house was huge. I can't believe I had never noticed it before. It was a sprawling 3-story mansion with what appeared to have been a large yard all around it. It seemed to be well kept, but everything about it repelled me. I looked at Jack and the other boy. Jack was looking around nervously. The boy, though, he had a radiant smile on his face. I noted he was actually breathing hard. I asked him if he was all right. He snapped his head towards me instantly while taking a step toward me. "Yes," he said, then slowly retreated one step back again. "What do you think?" he asked. Jack was barely audible when he answered. "I don't think we should go in if that's what you mean." "Of course we should go in. I know who lives here. They aren't there yet," he said. I agreed with Jack and voiced my concern with getting into trouble. "There will be no trouble. Let's just go," the boy said, and with that, he began to walk up the walkway to the front door. I thought the walk to that front door was the longest 25 feet of my life. Every step forward seemed to get colder. The darkness enveloped us, and the air seemed to become still. The repulsion I felt going forward was immense and progressive. I didn't know why I felt like this. I didn't want to seem scared, but I was, and I didn't know why, which made me confused on top of the anxiety I seemed to be becoming overwhelmed with. I was following the new friend of ours and Jack. The boy seemed to be bursting with enthusiasm and excitement as Jack and I trudged along. As we approached the steps up, I took hold of the rail and realized my palms were sweating profusely. I became aware of my own labored breathing. I looked to Jack, who mouthed, "No," at me as we were almost to the top step on the porch. My mouth was dry as I thought of 100 reasons not to open the large front door, but couldn't utter a single word. The boy stood in front of the door and turned to look at me. He simultaneously reached for the knob and turned it. I yelled, "No!" as he did, but to no avail, as we heard the click and the door began to swing open. The door creaked and groaned in a way that sounded guttural as he swung it open wide. I could see inside into the middle of the room, but the darkness swallowed the perimeter beyond. "Come in," was all he said as he boldly stepped in without looking back. Without a word, Jack and I followed him in. The smell was overwhelming as we stepped inside. It smelled musty, earthy, and almost rotten, like a trunk that had been closed for years. I thought the windows looked broken out in places, but there was no air moving through the house now. I don't remember the door shutting, but I felt the uncontrollable urge to run, and I backed right into the shut door. Jack, in a panic, grabbed the handle and wrenched on it, but it didn't budge. He pulled with increased fervor, and I began to hit the door with my closed fist, and my hands began to tingle. I swung around to see the boy standing, looking at us, expressionless. A smile began to creep into the corners of his mouth. This twistedly sick look he began to have made the terror well up even more. As I began to scream at him, he suddenly turned and ran into the darkness, laughing maniacally. I followed a few steps after him instinctively until I realized that, giggling, he ran down the stairs. Down the stairs seemed to be even blacker than the darkness that already left navigating nearly impossible. I turned to look at Jack, who was gone. I cried out in fear and frustration at our stupidity. Why would you ever go somewhere with someone you don't know? Yet here I am. Jack stepped forward into my field of vision and grabbed my arm. He began to sob. "What's going on? Where did he go? Why is this place so scary? What's going on?" I pulled him in and put my arm around his shoulder. "Look at me. We are going to get out of here," I said in as calm of a voice as I could muster. I looked to the side to a window and ran to it. I ripped the floor-length velvet curtains open and gasped to see a window. I looked next to me to see a small table and picked it up and banged it on the glass. I wasn't sure what was going on yet, but I wasn't fully committed to breaking out a window because I'm scared. This could be a prank done on poor taste. Fear overwhelmed my rational thoughts, and I swung it. It didn't budge, and I felt as though I were hitting stone. I was even more scared at this abnormal response. I backed up one step and swung as hard as I could to have the table splinter apart, with pieces smashing against the walls, floor, and into my head. I felt the point of impact to reveal on my head a spot of blood on my hand. The window appeared unblemished. As I frantically turned to see Jack crumple into a pile on the floor crying, "I want to go home." I grabbed his collar and pulled him to his feet. I went into the first open door I saw aside from the staircase. "That boy must be in on this. I don't know why he would bring us here, but you can be sure it's not good," I whispered as I pulled Jack along, who was now regaining his composure. The doorway opened into a large room. It appeared to be a library, as books lined the walls to high windows which must have been 3 stories tall, as there were balconies with ladders circumnavigating the room. I pulled us to one side as it seemed to offer a mirage of protection versus being in the room's center. I put a hand against the shelf and looked at the books. Most of the titles were in languages I didn't even recognize, some with what appeared to be symbols only. Breathing hard and looking around for the next move, I noticed there were mounted heads of animals surrounding the room. They were high above the books on the walls. Deer, bear, cougar. They did not have content looks on their faces, rather anger or fear. I looked to the next and found the animal to be beyond description. I stared at its cavorted face and studied it for a moment. It was unknown to me. I glanced ahead and found another unrecognizable head. Upon closer look, I gasped and nearly threw up. It was the head of what looked to be a person, but it had hair all over its face. Its simian likeness was unmistakable, yet it seemed more human. Jack was gasping at me, looking wildly in the direction I had been staring, yelling, "What is it?" He pulled at me to follow him, and I stumbled along. We came to a hallway with opposing doors. At the far end was a door with windows on either side. Long velvet curtains hung parted in the middle, showing the moonlight peeking through. We took pensive steps towards the first door, and I reached out to turn the knob. I cautiously edged the door open and peeked inside. It was too dark to make anything out visually, but I heard sounds. It sounded like some kind of animal was stepping in something wet and sludge-like. Grunting and labored breaths intermixed with ripping sounds came from somewhere within the room. A barely audible whimper was immediately stopped by a low growl. It was then Jack stepped back, and a squeak of the floorboard suddenly alerted whatever was in there. There was a rustling of something moving toward us, and I knew beyond any doubt that I did not want to know what was making that noise. I was able to get us out and slam the door before the thing could get there. Jack was whispering how badly he wanted to leave and clutching my arm in a near frantic manner. I was unsure if we should look in any more rooms or go try to escape from one of the windows at the end of the hall. As I was gathering my wits, I heard another moan. I thought it might have been my imagination, but Jack's face registered that he had heard it as well. "Was that the other boy?" he asked in a whisper. "I don't know," I replied as my voice broke. I had never and have not since known fear such as this. Sweat dripped off my nose, running down my neck and back. I was shaking and could barely speak. I had thrown up again after shutting that door. It just hadn't registered until now. I wiped at my face, and it was apparent I had not been aware enough to make any attempt to project it away from my body. I had a sudden recall that I had my cell phone. Funny how I had argued how I wanted and needed one with my parents and used the safety reason. How ironic, I thought, as I frantically dug it from my pocket. No service. As I thought my spirit couldn't drop farther, the date under the Times seemed to be spinning, like a dial. I had no idea what had happened, but the realization it was broken almost made me cry. If we made it out of there, my parents would kill me for breaking it. I was truly terrified as the tears began to run down my cheeks. I was breathing fast and hard. My head was spinning like I may pass out. Jack's sudden grip on my arm again brought my attention back to reality. We must have been moving the last few moments as we were standing in front of the next door, which, unfortunately, was open. There was a shaft of moonlight coming from the window across the room, and it fell on two of the dirtiest, foulest dogs I had ever seen. My mouth fell open in utter shock at the putrescence of them. They seemed to have what looked like some rotting skin in places. One looked like it was partially disemboweled and something drug on the floor a short distance behind it. The first one lowered his head with a growl, and saliva, or something like it, dripped from the large fangs. It momentarily glistened in the little light present. The smell coming from them was nauseating. Sickly sweet rotting stench with sulphur-esque tones burned my nose as I immediately recoiled from sight and smell. The closer animal, if you could call it that, began to growl, although the sound seemed to emanate from the hole in its side. I pushed Jack ahead of me as panic again rose in me like a wave commanding me to run. In spite of the pathetic creature's aberrant appearance, they could move quickly. Their claws dug to gain purchase on the old floor, shredding with each foot strike. There were snarling, jaws snapping, making saliva fling and spray in the moonlight. Our complete terror must have been adrenaline-fueled enough, as they were nearly to the end of the hall before I realized it. There was a perpendicular hall at the end by the windows, and as Jack was slowing to make a turn, I heard the hounds had stopped or slowed. I turned to look, and they had stopped 20 feet back and were crouching down with tails tucked between their legs, whining, and were turning back as though they were afraid of something. I called to Jack as quietly as possible to get his attention without drawing further alert to our presence. We were stopped by the windows, and I looked out. My parents were walking down the street. My heart soared as I hit the window, screaming their names, completely throwing caution to the wind. They couldn't hear, and kept going as there was no way for them to know I was here. I was supposed to be at the fair. How sorry I was that I hadn't done as I had said. I was going to die in this house. I didn't know what this place was, but it was so much worse than anything I had conjured up as a haunted house in my head. I would have given anything to be with my parents right now. Safe. Not here in this terrible place, whatever this was. I looked down the hall, and at the far end was what looked like an old servant staircase, narrow and steep going down. Wanting to go anywhere but down, I looked the other way and saw a door at the far end, and doors on opposing sides down the hall. More doors made fear well up inside me again. The hair began to stand up on my neck. There was a faint crying sound that was slowly growing louder. Was it a child? A woman? Was it the boy? I couldn't tell, but as it grew louder and louder, it became more distorted. It was a mixture of crying that was morphing from a cry to laughter with choking intermixed. I had never heard a sound like that before, and if I never do again, it would be a blessing. My fear was already overcoming me, and this wretched cacophony was more than I could take. I began to pull Jack to follow me, and we began to run. We sprinted into the hallway blindly in terror. I frantically grabbed at doorknobs to open one, any one of them, in hopes to get refuge from this horror. The light was so low I could barely make out the shapes of the doors. The illumination was minimal, and the color of the walls and doors appeared to be various shades of black. I scraped and patted around what I thought was a door and scrambled along. As I jabbed and reached, as I searched, I felt my fingertip catch on something sharp, and my skin hooked on to whatever nail or splinter protruded. I felt the warm fluid spread and drip. As I felt the casing for the knob, I felt my fingernail pull off entirely. In my nearly crazed search for a way out, the dark hall seemed to lighten slightly. The sound was still screeching, crying, laughter constantly, escalating to the point I thought my ears might burst. I felt Jack hitting at me and looked where he was staring. Coming down the hall was something I think no mortal man was meant to see. It was distorted and terrible, flowing with a jerking quality simultaneously. I was suddenly captivated at the indescribable sight approaching. It was sinister, abhorrent, and mesmerizing. I knew if it reached us, all was lost. My hand found the knob that was freezing cold. I turned it. As we fell back with the door opening, I turned quickly to survey and found we were trapped in a closet. In a completely reactionary measure, I slammed the door just as the specter reached us. It roared with an intensity that seemed impossible. It slammed into the door with such violence that shards of wood, dust, and material blew out of the wall, spraying down on us. For an unknown but seemingly endless time, the torrent of anger and pure rage continued to pound upon the door, and I do not know how it did not breach it. At some point it stopped. If possible, the sudden silence was even more deafening. Jack continued to lay on the floor next to me as I lay curled in the fetal position. After an indeterminate amount of time, I began to notice a light coming from under the door. I thought it looked like sunlight. I moved over and tried to peer under. I could see what looked like daylight on the old red carpet. I looked and listened and could perceive nothing outside the door. I reached up and turned the knob. With a creak that was the defining noise of every haunted house ever, the door opened. The hallway was lit with the earliest rays of the beautiful morning sun. It was such a welcome sight to the soul-sucking pitch black of the previous night. As I took in the sunshine, movement in the hall caught my attention, and I recoiled back. The sunlight was just peeking over the horizon through the windows, leaving shadows in between each one. The far end of the hallway was bathed in darkness to the door and beyond. The terrible apparition was hovering just at this boundary of light and dark. It was almost too much for my mind, and I thought I might pass out. It screamed and raged against this boundary, seething and pacing back and forth. It seemed to strain with all its will until the last bit of darkness was abolished with the wonderful sunlight. There was an implosion of sound with some sort of vapor or smoke, and when it dissipated, there was a single sheet with 2 eye holes cut out, perched at the end of the hall where it had been. It seemed almost comical, a cruel and mocking reminder that it was not gone, not truly. We eventually came to the realization that we were able to escape the house only after we passed by the classic ghost. I felt taunted and bullied by it. I wanted to knock it over, but was so repelled by it, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. I didn't and don't know what was under the sheet. We made our way through the house. There was no resistance. Windows were broken out, exterior doors left open, absent in some places. As we exited the house, we saw a passing police car and waved it down. The officer listened to both of us trying to relay the story, and he became suddenly very excited when he heard our names. We fell silent as he told us that we had been reported missing 6 days ago, and the entire town had been searching for us. Come to find out, the authorities had actually presumed us dead. My parents were out looking for me when I had seen them. My head beginning to spin was the last thing I remember that day. I'm not sure how many people believed us, if anyone. Jack and I drifted apart as I think both of us couldn't bear the memories of that night. Although thankfully, I have never had another experience such as this. I will never forget that ghost stories aren't always fun. First Date by Rob Fields. Perspective, Ariel Mirren. Who would have thought that my life would have changed so drastically over the holidays? I'm pretty good at keeping my feelings to myself, but I'm still very angry and upset with my parents. Mostly Mom. I still can't believe that witch offered me to Queen Arcadia in exchange for her fame and fortune. Oh, let me tell you, I was so angry with Mom that I screamed and threw everything at her that I could get my hands on. I mean, I destroyed a lot of stuff. My friends who were there with me had to pull me off Mom when I finally attacked her myself. I've had sufficient time now to calm down and assess my current situation. I'm living with Madeline Donnerly and her family now, and actually have my own room. Mouse's parents converted a spare bedroom just for me. Not only that, I figured that upon returning to Strickfield Junior High, that people would be jeering me about the whole fall from grace thing. No one said a word. In fact, I continued on as if that whole blow-up between Mom and I had never happened. But something did happen at school today. You probably know by now that Carter Cross and I have always been polar opposites. Even now, he still calls me Princess. But he's not making fun of me because of my fall from grace. I wasn't letting him off so fast, though. I still managed to swipe a few of his sodas, including at lunch period today. Today, though, it didn't feel right. Normally, Carter's on me the minute I swipe a soda. In fact, we both had the can, ready to fight for it. Then, he just let me have it. The truth is, I haven't forgotten that he asked me out the first weekend of December, when we were trapped in the Strickfield Town Center Mall overnight, hanging Christmas decorations for Cousin Harmony. I can't stop replaying that event in my mind over and over. Carter hasn't asked me out again since, though. However, I haven't really given him an answer. Then I remember that Carter Cross actually lives next door to me now. I go to my smartphone and text Carter to see if he's home. I get a reply back almost immediately. Yes. I get off my bed and head downstairs to go to his house. He's right there at the back door and invites me in. "What's up, Princess?" he asks. I take a deep breath and look at him. "Yes, Carter. I'm sorry I never answered you that night, but yes, I will go out with you." Carter and I stare at each other for a long moment. "You sure?" he asks quietly. I nod quickly. "We need to know for sure if there's really something there between us. We can know for sure in one date, right?" We stare at each other again. What do we do?" he stammers. "I ain't never been on a date before." "Me neither," I admit. "I guess we can just go hang out together, right?" Carter nods. "Okay, yeah. What time do you want to go?" Perspective, Carter Cross. Madeline Donnerly and me are playing video games at Roth's Rings. After losing a third straight game of Cruisin' USA, placing nearly last, Madeline looks at me. "Let's go talk, buddy," she says in her mousy voice. We grab our drinks and head outside. Then I just tell her, "Ariel and me are going on a date tonight." Her eyes are really wide now. "Really?" I tell Madeline about when I asked Ariel out at the mall during that overnight last month. I just kept thinking about it. You've been giving me a hard time about Ariel. I know Mona and Bailey give Ariel a hard time too. Ariel said we gotta know if there's something there, so we're gonna do one date. Tonight. Now it's the same silence like at my place when Ariel and I agreed to go out. Madeline breaks the silence. "Told you liked her, buddy." I sigh. "What if I mess things up with her, Madeline? This is our first date. It ain't gonna be like when we hang out." She smirks. "Just talk to her, Carter. The rest'll work itself out." I ain't never dated yet, but I understand a few things. Based on movies. She gently slaps my shoulder. Just talk to her. I nod quickly. Sorry about what happened in here. I should have just talked to you. It's all good, buddy, she replies. I put my hand on her shoulder. I'm glad I can always talk to you, Madeline. And you always will, she promises me. Feeling better, we go back inside and start playing again. Now I can actually compete with Madeline when we start racing again. Perspective, Ariel Mirren. I enter Mouse's house, she calls it the mouse hole, and see she's typing away on her computer. A few minutes later, she's finally done. I think she finished a paper for one of our classes. Now she looks right at me. It's gonna be okay, Ariel, she tells me. I sigh. Carter talked to you, didn't he? She turns in her chair and waits for me to sit on her lower bunk. He did, but you kind of been fidgeting all day. You only ever do that when you're really nervous, which don't happen often with you. I sigh again. I hate you, Mouse. She comes and sits beside me. It'll be okay. You and Carter are going to hang out. Just have fun and talk to him. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. It's Carter, Mouse tells me. I give her an odd look. Carter usually just comes in. Mouse smirks. Yeah, Carter and me usually walk into each other's houses, but Carter ain't here to hang out with me. He's here for you. Better go answer that. I look at the Freddy Krueger clock next to the door. 7:30. Time sure flew since Carter and I arranged our date. I see Mouse's smile and know everything's going to be all right. I get up and make my way down to the front door. Mouse is right when Carter's standing outside. We look at each other for a long moment, just like at his house earlier. Then I finally put on my jacket and go out onto the porch with him, closing the door behind me. We're officially on our first date now. Perspective, Carter Cross. Ariel and me are both pretty nervous. We're walking to downtown Village together in silence, glancing at each other at times. Finally, Ariel says something. I'm just as scared as you, Carter. That makes me feel better. What do you want to do? We stop right outside the Strickfield Centennial Theater. There's only 2 movies playing, including a special screening of Rad. Yeah, that bicycle movie from the 1980s. Ariel surprises me and wants to see it. I pay for our tickets and buy us both Cokes. Madeline and I had seen this movie plenty of times after we became friends. Rad got us into riding bikes the way we do, even getting mongooses. Anyway, Ariel never got bored once. Later, we were sitting in Big Ed's soda parlor after the movie and talking about it. Madeline's right about just talking to Ariel. Also, Ariel insisted on paying for our Sundays since I paid at the movies. Suddenly, Ariel's eyes get wide. So do mine when Bailey Downs and Mona Abels approach our table. Ariel's face goes red fast, and not 'cause she's mad. Aw, ain't you too cute? Mona teases. Bailey just gives Ariel this weird smile. Now Ariel does toughen up. Yes, I am here with Carter Cross. Go tell the whole school. When Bailey and Mona look at me, I just nod Ariel's way. What she said. Then Mona and Bailey smile wickedly and giggle a little before they start singing. Ariel's got a boyfriend. Ariel's got a boyfriend. Ariel growls at them. I hate you both. Then they turn and walk away laughing. The last thing I hear before they leave is Bailey telling Mona, Told you so. Ariel takes a deep breath and looks at me now. I really don't care, Carter. I smile at Ariel. Me neither. When we finish our ice cream, we leave and go walking around. Then I decide to be a man and take Ariel's hand. She gasps at first, and then relaxes. She doesn't take her hand back. Then we get calm and start talking again. Perspective, Ariel Mirren. You just know Bailey and Mona are going to tell anyone who's willing to listen. I meant what I said. I really don't care who knows that I'm on a date with Carter Cross. I decide to be honest with him. Maybe if I was still living back in the gated community, I might have denied it, but I'm out here with all of you now. You ever miss being in there? Carter asks. No, I say without hesitation. My parents never once called Mouse's house asking for me. They never stopped by either. Not even anything in the mail. I smile a little. Madeline's parents are good people. I know. Suddenly, Carter and I just stop dead. How did we end up walking down this street, Carter? I ask. We just did, Carter tells me. We just turned down this way and, well, Carter and I are staring right at the old Carnavash estate from outside the high fence. When Carter and I squeeze hands, I admit something to him. Mona, Bailey, and I dared Mouse to go into this house when we walked by it in early October. Mona asked her if she was chicken. Mouse simply told us she was brave enough to go in there, but not stupid enough. We didn't say anything more to her about it after that. Okay, well, let's just keep walking, Carter suggests after a little bit. Yeah, let's, I agree fast. But neither of us move. It's not because we're both scared of the house, it's because we're looking through the main gate and seeing a little girl standing in one of the windows, looking right out at us. Perspective, Carter Cross. Ariel and I both agree we saw that little girl in the house. We're both pretty sure nobody lives in the Carnavash estate, and not for a very long time. Living in the village itself, it would be big news fast if anyone actually moved in there. When the little girl moves away from the window, Ariel and I look at each other. Carter, we can't leave that little girl in there, Ariel tells me. I gulp. I was afraid you'd say that. Ariel and me don't even gotta talk about it. We climb the fence and go inside the property. Looks like this place ain't had yard work done in years. Even though it's early January, weeds seem to keep growing real good here. When we reach the front door, one of them's wide open. Then I hear Ariel gulp. She's breathing fast and giving me looks. I know I gotta be looking scared too. Ariel and I are still holding hands when we slowly go inside. We ain't even 2 steps past the door when Ariel and me both cry out and turn around to see the doors are both completely closed. We go to them and find we're locked in. Ariel quickly pulls out her phone. No, she looks at me. No signal. You? Uh-huh, I confirm. Then I open my settings. No nearby Wi-Fi either. We put our phones away, then Ariel points to the stairway. I don't think she was upstairs, Ariel, I say. I thought the little girl was in the room to the left of the doors. Ariel points in the direction. In there. Ariel quickly grabs my hand. Don't you dare let go. I'm not losing you, Carter Cross. I shake her hand to assure her I'm holding it. Then we walk into what looks like a living room. Little girl? I call out. Then I point to the window. There's where we saw her, right? We move to the window and look outside to see where we were before we came in. We'll have to keep looking around, Ariel says. She's not in here now. I stop her fast. Ariel! She turns and sees I'm pointing down a hallway where we see the little girl. Stop! Ariel calls out. Please, come this way! Ariel and I run down the hallway as she turns away. When we reach the end, we come into a conservatory. We move to the other entrance and go through it to see the little girl again at the end of another hallway. Carter! Ariel gasps. You seeing this? I nod fast. The little girl's feet are pointing to the floor, but it's plain as the noses on our faces. She's floating. Yeah, I definitely think she's a ghost, Ariel. I hate you, Carter, Ariel stutters. She really squeezes my hand now. Then we look down the hallway. I think she wants us to follow her, I say. It's like she's trying to tell us something. Ariel gulps again and turns me to look at the wall. There's an old Carnavash family portrait hanging there. Now we see the little girl at the very center, in front of her family. Clearly, she was the youngest. The date is January 4th, 1824. Perspective, Ariel Mirren. That little Carnavash girl is over 200 years old. Had she lived, we look to see her ghost is still waiting for us. Come on, Carter, I stammer. The two of us keep following the little girl until we're at another door. No doubt this one's going to lead into the one place you would never want to go in a creepy old mansion like this. The basement. The door opens on its own, then the little girl floats down the stairway. She's giving off this eerie light to show she's at the bottom and waiting for us. Since she's lighting our way, we can easily follow her down without tripping over our own feet. Carter insists on leading the way, like the gallant guy I know he is. When we reach the bottom, the ghost moves again. The basement's still lit thanks to her. She takes us through a few rooms and finally stops next to a big brick wall. Then she points right at it. You want us to break? Carter mumbles. The little girl keeps pointing to the wall. Then I see something. Over there, Carter. Grab that big hammer. Carter and I let go of each other's hands. He finds the big sledgehammer on a workbench and brings it over. It takes Carter a few really big hits before he finally succeeds in cracking the mortar. He keeps swinging and hitting until he finally makes a block come loose. Then he keeps hitting it until it falls over on the inside. Carter has to take little breaks to collect himself, but he finally manages to break the wall in enough. I take out my smartphone and shine my light through the hole Carter made. Carter and I both scream when we see a couple of skeletons, one big and one small. And then the little girl smiles happily and points to both of us. Suddenly, this huge flash of light washes over us. Epilogue. Perspective, Ariel Mirren. Later that night, Carter and I are in the mouse hole, telling Mouse about our experience at the Carnavash estate. We told her about finding the little girl, and then her leading us to where she and her dad were both walled up in the basement. 200 years ago, today, a band of robbers came to the Carnavash estate and robbed it. Emilio Carnavash tried to save and protect his family from the robbers, but it was all in vain. Emilio and little Rosemary were walled up within the basement to cruelly separate the two of them from Margot, the mother, and Rosemary's two older brothers, Waldo and Morton. Emilio was badly hurt and weakened, and Rosemary was too little. Unable to free themselves from their tomb, they died of starvation. We weren't shown what happened to the rest of the Carnavash family. I can feel like deep down that both the father and the little girl are resting in peace now, I finish. Yeah, we got out of the house and went to Roth's Rings to call the police anonymously, Carter adds. Carter and I both pinky promised Mouse that we weren't making up the story. I believe you both, she said. Come on, we survived Abigail Tomlin, a big vampire woman, and Queen Arcadia, right? Good point, Madeline, Carter agrees. When we finish talking, Carter and I leave the house. We find ourselves holding hands again as we walk onto Carter's back porch. Carter and I both look like we want to say something to each other, but we just look at each other again. Carter leans in a little. He's hesitating. I'm hesitating. And then, I barely feel it when we come apart, but Carter and I shared our first kiss. We don't even have to say anything to each other, but we know mutually we're not going to be just one and done on dating. Carter and I say goodbye, and I watch him go into his house. I return to the Donnerly home and go back in. I head to my room and lay on my bed, knowing I have a lot to think about. And that's where this particular adventure ends. But I can promise you, we'll be back again very soon.
Lucien Greyshire and the Ghost from Applebee's by L.F. Falconer. The three young girls in the corner booth continued to stare. Not due to rudeness, Lucien determined, merely out of morbid curiosity. Their parents attempted to be more furtive in their sidelong glances and struggled with useless, hushed commands to curtail their daughter's blatant surveillance. Lucien no longer cared. With 3/4 of his body severely scarred from a house fire he'd survived as a child 40 years ago, he'd grown hardened to the horrified scrutiny of others, the secretive glimpses, the whispers behind his back. At one time, his disfigurements brought him shame. Now he wore these scars with honor, deeming his outer grotesqueness more valuable than his business card. A man no one truly wanted to see, yet one not so easily forgotten. If he caused anyone nightmares along his journey through life, he lost no sleep over it. Harried to the point of distraction by their children, the two adults in the corner booth remained oblivious to the fact that half their current troubles were caused by the antics of the youthful poltergeist hovering above their table. A spilled glass of milk, the forks fallen to the floor, the plate of French fries toppled onto the youngest girl's lap had nothing to do with the carelessness of rambunctious children, and at this moment, the ghost was ever so slowly unscrewing the cap on the salt shaker. Lucien savored the final bite of his lemon chicken, then dabbed his napkin over the thin lips below the cartilaginous remnants of his nose. He rose to his feet and placed enough cash on his meal check to cover his lunch as well as a generous tip. In response to his appearance, the server had neither balked nor overcompensated. Shrugging on his wool jacket, he took pity on the beleaguered parents in their challenge to maintain a sense of decorum amid the chaos, especially as the children's father had just ruined his own meal with a full shaker of salt spilled upon it. The poltergeist above the table glowed in rapid pulses of jade green. Leaving his table, Lucien limped directly to the booth the family occupied. Everyone at the table fell, transfixed, as if they'd all just been caught with their hands in the till. Lucien greeted them with a courteous bow. "Good afternoon." He raised his one good eye to acknowledge the ghost hovering above. Bemusedly, the ghost cocked an eyebrow, then darted to the left side of the table, taking refuge behind a potted imitation philodendron. Lucien straightened his gaunt frame and withdrew a business card from his inner jacket pocket. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Lucien Greyshire, and I have a business proposal if you'd be interested." He handed his card to the father, then glanced over at the ghost who peeked through the Kelly green leaves, giving the young shade a polite nod. The man at the table seemed hesitant to accept the card, but once he took it into his possession, he scanned it out loud. "Let the dead bring your party to life. Greyshire Incorporated. Unique Halloween Entertainment Services." He looked up at Lucien with knitted brows. "What's this about?" "I'm in need of an assistant events coordinator." Lucien glanced back over at the ghost. "If you're interested, meet me in the park across the street within the hour." He kept his one-eyed gaze on the ghost. "I already have a job." The man at the table tried to hand the business card back, but Lucien stepped away from the table and gave another slight bow. "I'll be waiting should you be interested." His papery lips smiled at the ghost before he turned and departed the restaurant. A somber sky loomed above, gray with pewter clouds billowing like dust. Lucien breathed deeply of the air, still wet from last night's tempest and laced with faint hints of pine, damp bark, and blight. Dying boughs and limbs ripped from their hosts and tossed haphazardly by the uncaring gale littered the park's greensward. Lucien blessed the previous night's storm. The howling winds had covered every muffled scream. The man's name had been Daniel. He was 67 years old, and now he was dead. October leaves in persimmon, amber, and blood crunched beneath Lucien's feet, while crisp Lake Erie air nipped at his exposed, disfigured flesh. He settled onto a park bench, his muscles aching, strained from last night's activities. Out of his jacket pocket, he removed a well-used paperback copy of Peter Nichols' A Day in the Death of Joe Egg. He'd barely read 3 pages when an adolescent apparition tentatively drifted near. Lucien looked up from his book. Though little more than a translucent shadow, the ghost featured a clinging wet t-shirt, dark jeans, and high-top athletic shoes. He looked to have been maybe 15 or 16 at the time of his death, his dark, damp ribbons of hair plastered against his skull. Last night's events flickered through Lucien's mind in high-speed clips. Cold waters whipped to a frenzy by boisterous wind, Daniel's hand clawing at Lucien's own as he gurgled within the spume. The young shade scooted swiftly to the left. With a steady gaze, Lucien's good eye trailed the movement. The shade darted back to the right, still fixed beneath Lucien's magnetic stare. The ghost took a minor step closer. "You can really see me?" Lucien closed his book. "Indeed." "Was this job offer really for me or, for him?" The ghost jerked his head in the direction of the restaurant across the street. "For you, of course. I thought I'd made that pretty clear. You was a bit fuzzy, mate. I believe it would have been awkward to speak to you directly when it's only I who am aware of your presence. I'm not certain why you're trying to pull off a phony accent. I happen to know you're an American." The ghost took a step back, crossing his arms. "And what makes you so smart, huh?" Lucien winked his sighted eye. "I know many things. It's what I do." The ghost jutted his chin forward. "But I guess you don't know my mum's Canadian." Lucien flipped his jacket collar up to keep the lake-chilled air off his neck. "Point taken, but that's neither here nor there. The important thing is that you've come. You may call me Lucien, and what may I call you?" "Anything you like, I suppose. In another life, I believe they called me Patrick, but can't recall the last time I heard the name. Could just be a name I like. I don't know. There's not much about life I can remember." He relaxed, looking Lucien directly in the eye. "It's kind of like a shattered mirror, life, I mean. My life. And I'm afraid if I try to put the pieces back together, I might not like what I see. Other than looking like a drowned rat, you're not a bad-looking fellow." The ghost faded slightly. "It's not about my looks. I'm invisible, unlike you. Meaning, no offense, but dude, really." Lucien shook his head. "No offense taken, and there's no need to pick up the pieces. It could do you no good now." He swiftly caught a wayward, breeze-blown newspaper page beneath his foot, anchoring it to the ground. "Patrick it is, then. The name suits you, so tell me, Patrick, would you like the job?" Patrick settled onto the seat beside him. "What's in it for me? I'm free to come and go as I please, and don't have to answer to anyone." "I dare say you're rather bored." And lonely, Lucien thought, a feeling he knew too well. Being little more than a living wraith himself. But what a pitiful way to spend eternity, tormenting children in a restaurant, and an Applebee's no less. "Ah, that's where you're wrong, mate. I've no ties to the restaurant, and I wasn't tormenting the children. I was tormenting the parents." "You hold a grudge against parents, do you?" "It would seem that way now, wouldn't it? But I can't say for sure. Could just be something I do for kicks, you know. Probably one of those Broken pieces. Patrick leaned forward, elbows on his knees. So, how come you can see me and hear me when no one else can? The crackle of flames and the smell of charred wood inundated Lucien's memory. Smoke billowing beneath the locked bedroom door. On the other side, his father shouts. Heavy footfalls. Leaving. "Help me, Daddy!" Lucien's frantic cries. Eyes burning, throat constricting, hot smoke wrapping him in a shroud. "I was dead once myself," he admitted, glancing over at the ghost beside him. "A fireman resuscitated me." He had been brought back to life. His mother and brother had been more fortunate, not having to live the ordeal over and over and over again. The nightmares had long ago disappeared, making way for vivid, waking memories. Patrick straightened in his seat. "That's how you got all them scars, eh? That's rough, man. But that don't explain much. Other folks have been resuscitated, but no one's ever seen me before, so why you?" For nearly a year during my recovery, I remained in a state of flux, or half-life, if you will. Forced against his will into a world of forgotten shadows, Lucien continued to keep one foot in reality, and the other foot in the grave. A part of me still dwells in the realm of lost souls. Some people might consider that a curse, but I view it as a unique gift, for I am in a position to offer those in limbo some comfort. Limbo sucks, especially if you're invisible. Patrick's voice broke upon his words. It was impossible to give the boy a hug. Lucien had to rely on speech. That's why you feel compelled to cause chaos. It's the only way you can validate your dismal existence. Patrick leaned back, clasped his hands and twiddled his thumbs, staring up at the steely, cloud-studded sky. A pair of starlings roosted, chattering quietly in the bare treetops above. Patrick shot up like a rocket and thumped the branch, startling the birds into flight. As Patrick settled back onto the bench beside him, Lucien stowed his book away in his pocket. "What I am offering you, Patrick, is a chance to do something productive with your existence. I could use a man of your talents. I have no talent, but you do. Very few spirits have the ability to move objects. I can only do it if they're not too heavy. I can't budge anything over a couple of pounds, and I don't know why you'd want a limbo ghost anyway. We're a pathetic bunch. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, bored, like you said. And boring to boot. I can do nothing about whatever is holding you here, but I can offer you a sense of purpose. After tomorrow, I'll be moving on. This is an opportunity you may never come across again." Patrick kicked at the leaves below his feet, swirling them in a colorful dance upon the sidewalk. "Doing what exactly?" "Helping me in my endeavors. That's all." "What kind of endeavors? What do you do besides know many things?" "Well, for one, I throw parties. Huge Halloween parties for the filthy rich. Excruciating extravaganzas, really. But I always deliver on my clients' contracts, and they're willing to pay me quite well." "Parties, huh? I think there's more to it than that. You said for one, so what's for two?" Talented and attentive. Even better, Lucien thought, allowing his good eye to wander the immediate vicinity for a moment. The threat of more stormy weather kept the park relatively deserted. Ensured there was no one nearby, he quietly confided. "For two, I kill people." Patrick sprang from the bench. "Hold a minute!" He raised his hand in a stop action and took a step back. "Tormenting folks is one thing, but I want no part in killing innocents." Unapologetically, Lucien stared up at him. "Only children are innocent. The rest of us are all guilty of something. Think of me as an extension of justice." "Are you like some kind of hitman, or do people only pay you for parties?" Lucien hesitated momentarily. "I do get paid for hosting parties. Quite well, in fact. Yet there are some clients who request an extra dash of pepper on their salad, so to speak." Patrick paced the concrete, stirring the leaves beneath his feet back into action. "I don't know, mate. I start doing real harm to folks, and next thing you know, I'm yanked straight into hell. Lucien folded his gnarled hands, his sightless eye gleaming dully in the muted daylight. I would never ask you to harm anyone. That pleasure is reserved for me, and me alone. I simply need help in orchestrating my events, hence the job title of Assistant Events Coordinator. Your soul and conscience remain unsullied. A young couple holding hands strolled by, giving Lucien a wide berth. They passed through Patrick, causing him to fade in and out. He stopped pacing and lunged towards Lucien. Ripping the newspaper page from beneath his foot, he swatted the couple with it on the back of their heads before setting the page free in the breeze. His bone-colored face distorted by deep thought. He swept back to Lucien's side. I'm still not sure this is something I should be taking part in, if you know what I mean, he muttered. The killing part. I understand your concerns, Patrick. Yet you seem to enjoy tormenting the living, and that's all I would ever expect you to do. During the party, would you be willing to give it a trial run? I have an event scheduled tomorrow night at Gates Hotel. A party at the Gates? Patrick snorted and took a step back. Well, that should be a hoot. Those two snobby sisters there don't much care for company, dead or alive, carrying on like the world belongs to only them. That's odd, Lucien said. I found them to be rather charming. It had been those sisters who'd led him to Patrick, who'd told him of the boy's talent and revealed the details of his untimely death. And since the hotel is slated to be razed before Christmas, Jasmine and Ruby have graciously agreed to help me host this year's event. One last hurrah for them, so to speak. With them two, you've already got the best. What do you need me for? Lucien spoke with a smile. The sisters may be capable of vivid manifestation and bone-chilling audio, but they cannot move things. The party guests will be expecting a magnificent, haunted experience. I prefer to give them a night to truly remember. A green aura glowed from within, and Patrick smiled. Most of these people are parents, right? I would assume so. And I don't have to take part in no killing? Lucien nodded. Rest assured, that contract has already been completed. A small white lie. Sometimes a party was simply a party, and a target a deliciously convenient coincidence. Patrick gusted across the sidewalk, knocking the hat off the woman pushing a baby carriage, then sidled back to Lucien's side. Can I ask who it was? No, you may not. Not even a clue? Lucien ran a ragged finger across the thinly stretched skin of his missing lips, as if zipping them shut. There was no need to tell the lad. It had been his father. Lucien's own father may have been unsuccessful, but Patrick's had seen the deed through. For 30 years, Patrick has wandered in the realm of lost souls, and last night, the father, like the son, unwillingly surrendered his life within the cold, dark waters of Lake Erie. He wondered, had Patrick fought as hard to survive as Daniel had? Lucien rose from the bench. Stick with me, Patrick, and I promise you will never be forced to carry the burdens of my sin. Now, shall we go? There's a pair of fine 19th century sisters I'd like you to meet. Lucien limped down the walkway, the leaves beside him swirling in a kaleidoscopic dance.
Suffer the Little Children by Dennis Freeman.
You're not goddamn going, Anthony said, trying his father's favorite epithet on for size. He was only 12, but thanks to Jacob Anderson, he had quite a colorful vocabulary for his age. He surveyed his little brother's face and saw no sign of shock at the use of the GD word, but only a solemn, pouting lower lip. Greg was 11, and even though both went to middle school, there was an unspoken but well-defined hierarchy. Anthony hung out with kids from his class who were mostly 12 and 13, and despite being only a year and 19 days older than Greg, he knew his little brother would be categorized as a baby big kid by his friend James. Come on, Tony, Greg whined. All my friends are gone for Thanksgiving break. Let me hang out with you guys. Can't do it, Sprat. I'll tell Mom you and your friends were playing at the quarry, Greg exclaimed. Tony was momentarily worried by this threat, but let it slide. He knew Greg would be upset he couldn't go, but he'd never endanger his own well-being by telling their mother something that would surely land Anthony in his room with no Xbox One and the cable disconnected for no less than 2 weeks. Do that, and you'll never get to hang out with us, Anthony said. What am I supposed to do, Tony? Stop whining, for starters. He said it much more harshly than he intended. Greg cast his eyes down at his feet, and Anthony sighed. He put his arm around Greg, after checking around the street to make sure nobody was watching, and tried to comfort his brother. If you get hurt playing at the quarry with us, Mom would shit a bird. Greg giggled at this like Anthony knew he would. The mental image of their mother shitting feathers tickled Greg, and the first time Anthony had said it, his little brother had nearly died laughing. I guess I'll just play Xbox. You better be home by 5, though. Mom and Dad will be asking where you are, and I hate pretending like I don't know, Greg said. Promise, Anthony raised a 3-finger scout salute. Look, I'll talk to James and the guys and see if I can't get them to let you come with us next time, okay? Greg smiled and nodded. Anthony would probably mention it to the guys, but he knew he wouldn't put up much of a fight if they said no. Anthony wasn't a mean brother by any means, but he was a follower by nature. Greg knew this even if he didn't know exactly how to articulate it. He watched as Anthony mounted his big red mongoose and took off down the street to meet the rest of the James gang, as they called themselves. Once his brother was out of sight, Greg sighed and went inside to get a soda and retired to his room to play Xbox. Greg sat on the floor by his bed, surrounded by a plethora of empty soda cans and candy wrappers. Had his mother walked in at that exact moment, she would have shit a bird at the sight. He turned off his console and began to stuff the wrappers into his already overflowing wastebasket. He took the cans downstairs and put them in the recycling and plopped down onto one of the bar stools in the kitchen. It was only 11:30, and Greg had already exhausted his patience at the new Madden game. It's going to be exactly the same as the last 3, Anthony had said one day when Greg had excitedly described the commercial to him. As usual, his brother had been correct in his assumption. Great graphics aside, the Xbox wasn't keeping Greg's attention, and he started to think about what Anthony and his friends could be doing down at the quarry. Anthony was only a year older than he was, and Greg couldn't imagine that he and his friends were doing anything that he himself couldn't do. Fuck it, Greg muttered under his breath. His cheeks flushed hot at the vocalization of what his mother called the really bad word, and he went into the garage to grab his bike. He would ride down to the quarry and see just what his brother's friends were up to. He would go what his father called incognito and watch from afar, at first. He grabbed the backpack his parents had bought him for hiking trips and put on his khakis, which clashed with the black athletic shorts and the orange basketball jersey, but he wasn't out to win any fashion contests. He pulled his curly locks back out of his face and put them into a ponytail. He had had long hair since he was a baby, and with the exception of a handful of trims, he'd always worn his hair long. The older he got, the less serious the teasing about his hair got, and now he even received a few compliments, mostly from girls. Greg mounted his blue Huffy and started off down the street. He rode down Alberta Street and took a detour between a pair of houses on Jackson. The trip itself only took about 10 minutes, but it felt like forever to Greg, whose mind wouldn't stop speculating as to what he'd see when he got there. He wondered if James' gang would be doing dangerous stunts on their bikes, or perhaps they were wrestling by the scummy pond that was in the pit left over from the rainy weather they'd had. They may be hanging out with girls, he thought. This brought a fresh flush to his cheeks. He was 11 and his girls are icky stage had been over for almost a year, but he still wasn't sure about the fairer sex. He had a basic grasp on what boys and girls did together when they were older, but the thought of it still caused a weird mix of emotions he wasn't able to understand. He felt his pants begin to tighten in the crotch and forced himself to think of something else. The last thing he needed was to run into his brother and his friends with a raging hard-on. He wouldn't live that down, not in this lifetime. The next one either, for that matter. Greg dropped his foot down and drug it through the gravel as he decelerated. He approached the edge of the quarry warily. He saw Anthony's bike parked by some bushes among 4 others and left his own a few feet away. He adjusted his backpack and crouch-walked down the narrow path beaten down by adolescent foot traffic and made his way to the edge of the pit. He looked down and saw the 5 boys who made up the James gang laid out on the rocks by the water that was pooled down there. He didn't see any girls, but he did see that 2 of them were smoking cigarettes. He did a double take when he realized that his brother was one of the ones smoking. A cigarette hung lackadaisically from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes squinted against the smoke as he skipped rocks across the surface of the water. Mom would shit a bird, he grinned maniacally at this. 2 of the kids looked like they were playing a board game, checkers it looked like, and James and another boy that Greg didn't recognize were talking next to Anthony. Not talking, Greg thought. Arguing. A little shoving match broke out between James and the other boy, and Anthony moved in between them to break it up. He took the cigarette out of his mouth and moved it nimbly between his fingers as he did this. Greg noted that it probably wasn't the first time his brother had smoked. Greg couldn't tell what the boys were arguing about, so he decided he was going to try and sneak to a pile of broken stones about 10 feet away from the boys. He once again began to crouch walk, but avoided the path. "You're a fucking liar," Charles exclaimed. James regarded him menacingly, but Anthony held him back to avoid a full-on fistfight. "I am not. My dad told me the story himself. You're calling my dad a liar, fat ass?" James shouted indignantly. Charles cast his eyes down, not wanting to meet James' angry gaze. He was 13, and although the jibe about his weight hurt, he was still young enough to believe that everything their parents told them was the truth. He was okay with calling James a liar, but to call his father, an adult, a liar was an entirely different animal. "Sorry, James," Charles said, his face glowing red. James blinked at the sudden shift the conversation had taken. "Me too." His face softened a bit. "I'm sorry I called you a fat ass." "It's okay." Anthony, sensing the drama was over, moved back over by the water. He flicked his cigarette into the scummy pond and went back to skipping rocks. "He told me that back then the water was a lot higher and kids would jump off the rocks and into the water," James said. "He said after a couple of guys died, they closed the place up. Some of the kids that did sneak in said they saw ghosts or some shit." "That makes sense," Charles said. "It's the other part that sounds weird. Maybe it's true, though. Like a horror movie or something," Anthony added. "Dad said that some of the kids kept coming down here even after they closed it up. They saw things like..." "Weird things," James said. Anthony nodded as if this were to be expected. The idea of ghosts was not unfathomable for his 12-year-old mind. If they died suddenly, like broke their necks when they dove in or drowned or whatever, they probably stuck around. Unfinished business or to try to keep other people from dying, Anthony offered. He spoke in a scholarly tone like a professor teaching the ways of the world to his pupils. Even Eddie and Tim had stopped playing checkers to regard Anthony with intense, wide eyes. Anthony looked up and saw that all his friends were staring at him now. He shrugged his shoulders and smiled. "That's what I think, anyways." James nodded in agreement. This minor gesture made Anthony swell with pride. James was their de facto leader after all, and any praise, spoken or not, was brag-worthy. Eddie and Tim went back to their game, Eddie squinting in concentration. "Want to all meet back up here tonight?" James asked. "Sure. Hey, James." "Yeah?" "I was thinking about something. Can my little brother come with us? I know he's a little younger, but he isn't a spaz or anything." "You want to bring your little brother?" James asked with a chuckle. "Well, yeah, I mean, if you guys don't mind." He looked over towards the other 3 for confirmation. They shrugged. "I guess," James said. "I'll bring my sister's Ouija board. Everybody meet me up here at 9:30. I gotta go, and make sure I don't miss dinner." "Our mom will never let us out after 9. "Well, then don't come," James said. His tone was dismissive, but his eyes were sharp and predatory. We'll figure it out." Greg's grin was wide and toothy as he rode back to the house. Anthony had done what he said he would. He stood up and asked that Greg be included. He wouldn't let on that he had been there, and he knew he'd need to act surprised when Anthony asked him if he wanted to sneak out with him tonight. In most cases, he would never even consider sneaking out after curfew, but he knew he'd never get another chance like this one if he chickened out. His brother had stuck his neck out. The ride back felt a lot faster than the ride to the quarry because he felt like he was floating. That night, the two of them snuck out of the front door. Anthony had been adamant about Greg and himself bringing their keys. It wouldn't do to get home only to find out that they had locked themselves out. Greg double-checked the pocket of his jeans and assured Anthony he was ready. The two of them had left their bikes in the yard to keep from having to open the garage and pushed them halfway down the street before mounting up. They made their way down the various streets cautiously. The streetlights illuminated the way for most of the trip, but the last half-mile was on the outskirts, where the lights were fewer and far between. Anthony narrowly avoided a pothole that would have sent him ass over tea kettle and ended the night in the emergency room instead of the quarry. Calling his parents from the ER to tell them he and Greg had snuck out and landed in the hospital would be a surefire way to end up in the morgue shortly thereafter. They parked their bikes where they had stashed them earlier that day, and Greg hit the button on the side of his watch to illuminate the time. It was 10:15, and the two of them moved as quickly as they could without falling down the pit where the rest of the James gang was waiting. They were sitting in a semicircle with candles and the Ouija board sitting in the center. After perfunctory introductions of the newest member of the gang, Anthony and Greg took their place, completing the circle. "Are we all ready?" James asked. Nobody said anything at first. They only stared at each other. "Ready," Greg said. James acknowledged him with a smile, and soon the others followed suit. "Ready, James," Charles said. "Ready," Anthony said. "Ready," Eddie and Tim said in unison. James nodded again and beckoned them to touch the planchette with him, and of course, they obliged. The second Greg's fingers made contact with the light wood of the planchette, he felt an unnatural chill run up his spine. His balls started to draw up into his body as the first real fear of the night began to sink in. Greg had been nervous when they snuck out of the house because, if they were to get caught, his mother would do far more than shit a bird. She was bound to shit a flock of them. This felt different somehow. It was more unnatural. Greg surveyed the rest of the boys. Their faces were a plethora of silhouetted features, and each of them took on the appearance of skulls. Even Charles's unusually pudgy face appeared gaunt in the candlelight. The pit's pool of water lay stagnant, and the smell of the sludge and algae hung in the air. He was vaguely aware that Anthony's breath was coming out in hitches and jerks. "Are there any spirits here?" James asked suddenly. Greg looked up at him, and even in the low candlelight, he could see that he was going pale. Nothing happened at first, and everyone, Greg included, let out a sigh of relief. He hadn't really expected anything to happen, but the unknown had terrified Greg. Before he could get far into his own inner monologue, the wooden planchette moved, slowly, to the yes on the board. "What in the actual fuck?" Anthony said. Greg looked over at his brother, who was now ghostly white. At a glance, he could see that everyone else was too. Pale, but with a creepy smile that had been plastered to his face, and his eyes appeared to glaze over. "What is your name?" Greg asked. It was out of his mouth before he could stop the compulsion, and Anthony stared at him, mouth agape. Greg opened his mouth to apologize when the planchette once again began to move, until it came to rest on the letter N. They watched in fascination as the word Nergal was spelled out before him. Greg was about to ask it another question when it suddenly started to move again. This time it spelled out Jagon. "I guess there's two of them," James said. "I'm done." Charles pulled his hand back from the planchette and started to get to his feet. James looked at him, pointedly annoyed, and rolled his eyes. "Don't be such a baby." "I'm not being a baby. I'm just done with this shit. This is creepy." "Just sit down." "Fuck you, James. I said I'm fucking done with..." Charles was silenced mid-sentence as a shadow coming from the pond wrapped itself around his throat. His hands flew up to his neck as his air was cut off. Greg screamed and jumped back as he saw tentacles reaching for him. They appeared to be made up of the shadows. Charles' face was turning purple when he fell to the ground, still clutching his throat as the shade dragged him back towards the water. Greg sprung to his feet and turned toward his brother, who was already up and backing away from the tentacles. Eddie and Tim were both fighting against the shadows that had grabbed them by their legs, and James was being dragged by his arm into the water. His screams were ear-piercing at first, but were soon cut short into a gurgle as his face was pulled underwater. Greg would have continued to sit and stare at James as a tentacle wrapped itself around his leg had he not felt someone yank him by the back of his shirt. His collar tightened around his throat as he had a moment of panic. "It has me," he thought, as he pulled forward towards the pool to escape the force pulling him. Anthony spun him around and leaned down into his face. His lips were moving, but Greg couldn't hear him over the sound of guttural, inhuman screaming. Terror was taking over when Anthony brought his hand across his face. Greg blinked wildly and tears began to well up in the corner of his eyes. Anthony had never hit him like that, but suddenly the sound coming out of his mouth was audible. "Run, Greg," Anthony screamed. Greg didn't need to be told twice. He took off in a sprint past Anthony, who followed closely behind him as they beat up the path toward their bikes. Greg was too terrified to look over his shoulder to see if they were being followed and mounted his bike after a running start. He could hear Anthony pedaling behind him. He felt his heart beating out of his chest as he pedaled like a mad bastard trying to beat the devil. When he had cleared the first 2 streets, he snuck a glance behind him and saw that Anthony was at least 15 feet back. He slowed a bit and allowed him to catch up. As they pulled up to their house, Greg's bike struck the curb and he was thrown from it. He landed hard on his shoulder and rolled onto his back. Anthony came up next to him and bailed off his bike without stopping. He ran to Greg and pulled him up into his lap. They were both breathing hard and tears were flowing freely as Greg crawled up his brother's body to embrace him. Anthony hugged him back and soon they were both sobbing and screaming into each other's shoulder. "Thank you so much," Greg said between sobs. "Thank you for grabbing me. I love you," Anthony said. It seemed to be the only thing he could say. He was still saying it when a black tentacle reached out from the darkness and wrapped them both into a cold embrace.
Father's Day by Shane Migliavacca.
This section of the path scared Matt shitless. Not that he'd admit it to anyone, especially to Greg and Jenny, his 2 best friends, walking a little ways in front of him. Last year there had been a stabbing. A few years before that, a man's body had been discovered face down in Pierce Creek, not that far from here. Matt didn't believe in curses or bad luck, but there was a feeling he got in his gut whenever he passed through the area. He'd rather be at home playing video games today. His parents were visiting Matt's grandfather for Father's Day, and he'd have the whole house to himself. Instead, here he was. Matt blamed Jenny, specifically her tight blue jeans and nice smile. The 3 of them had been friends for years. Matt was fairly certain that Jenny had a thing for Greg, but Greg was oblivious to it. But it was only a matter of time before he noticed. Matt could feel his chance with Jenny slipping away if he didn't speak up soon. He winced as the 2 laughed about the same joke. "So, where the hell are we going?" Matt blurted out. Greg looked back over his shoulder. "Don't have a cow, dude. We're almost there." Jenny laughed, making Matt feel a bit annoyed. He kicked a stone off the path, watching it shoot off into the grass. The 3 walked in silence for a few minutes, until Greg stopped them. "And here we are." He pointed towards the left side of the trail. Matt's gaze followed his friend's gesture. There, through the trees, the roof of a house could be seen, its tiled roof weathered from age and the elements. "There?" Jenny asked. "Yup," Greg said proudly. They followed him off the path, pushing through some brush to get to the house. As they emerged into the house's overgrown backyard, its ramshackle condition became more apparent. "What a dump," Jenny observed. "We're not," Greg cut her off. "Sure as shit we are." "Why?" asked Matt, wishing he'd stayed home. "Because," Greg answered as he walked up the steps to the back door. "Don't you want to have some fun instead of jacking off to Saved by the Bell all day?" "Har, har," Matt responded. He felt a bit of anger boil through from his friend's consent prodding. He surprised himself when he flipped Greg off. I didn't think you had it in you, somebody said, clapping. Besides, I see you stroking it more to Power Rangers. They turned to see Dave Stover standing by the side of the house. A girl dressed in black stepped out from behind him. Her short brown hair was slicked straight back and a black choker encircled her neck. What are you doing here, Stover? Matt asked. There was something about that smug, shit-eating grin that made Matt want to punch Stover's teeth in. Greg and Stover went way back. Why his friend would hang out with that ass was beyond Matt. He's the reason we're here, Greg answered. Matt sighed. Great. Stover introduced the girl. This is Ember. She's going to help us play a little game. They followed Stover into the house. The back door opened easily. The smell of stale cat urine greeted them as they stepped into a bare kitchen. Jenny whispered in Matt's ear, Ember? That's bullshit. Her name's Tracy Hollis. She's in my English lit class. The two softly chuckled. Stover took them down a musty hallway. The plaster walls were chipped and marked with graffiti, chunks of broken plaster crunched underfoot. Matt wondered who'd lived here. There was nothing left to mark their time here. The hall opened up in a large room. At the room's center was a large circle of candles. Strange symbols were written on the floor within the circle. Matt felt strangely uneasy as he entered the room. He didn't believe in magic, but it didn't mean you went messing around with the shit. What the hell? Matt said. I don't think we should fuck around with this stupid shit. Relax, man, Greg reassured his friend. Wait till you hear the story. Let's find out first, Jenny added. I want to find out what's up. Damn it. Matt didn't want to walk out with Jenny staying behind, partly because he'd look like a wimp, and partly because he worried about her. Then, let's get on with it, Matt grumbled. What have we got to do? Ember sat them around the circle, all holding hands, with him and Stover on either side of Ember. Matt felt a little nervous and shy taking the girl's pale hand. She smelled like sage and her lips were black as midnight. Staring into her eyes for a second, he forgot about Jenny. Stover cleared his throat before starting. Man got home from the war and bought this house for him and his pregnant wife. They wanted to start a future here. Greg interrupted. Which war? What? Stover stammered. Which war? Stover's brow furrowed. That one, a long time ago in the 70s. Korea? Jenny asked. No, not that one from Rambo. Nam. Wasn't that in the 80s? Greg said, unsure. Frustrated, Stover grumbled. Does it fucking matter? Well, context, Greg said. Helps set the scene better, man. It was the fucking 70s, okay? Can I get on with the story? Nobody said anything. So the dude and his wife bought this house. A couple years later, they have a daughter. The three have a happy life for a bunch of years. Then the mom gets sick and dies. Aw, that blows, Jenny said. Stover ignored her, continuing on with the story. The father was left to raise the girl by himself, and he did the best he could, got a second job and shit. Stover leaned forward. Then one day, the father came home, worn out from a tough day. The daughter, 15 at the time, told him to take a nap in his favorite chair. Stover smiled. Right over there, indicating a corner of the room. She wanted to surprise him, make him some dinner, so she decided to walk to the convenience store down the path. What? Greg asked. I don't remember any store around here. Stover sighed. The vacant lot on Rathburn. Used to be a store there. They closed it because it was getting robbed too much. Oh, Greg nodded, mulling it over. Anyway, the father wakes up, Stover continued. He finds the house all dark. He calls for his daughter, and there's no answer. Jenny shifted nervously on the floor. Before he can go out to find her, there's a knock at the door. It's the police. The cops ask if she's there. The clerk at the shop called the cops after the girl was getting harassed by some boys. Well, days passed, and there was no trace of the girl. The father grew desperate. Matt glanced at Ember, who had her eyes closed. Was she meditating? Finally, one day, they found one of the girl's shoes near the hangout of a bunch of boys, the ones that had been giving the girl a hard time that night. Trouble is, there's no other evidence. The cops couldn't do shit. Matt looked over at Jenny, who was enjoying the story. His mind wandered as he briefly thought of Jenny, Ember, and him, all alone, together. The thought was a little too much for his hormones. He could feel things stirring that shouldn't be right now. He quickly turned his attention back to the story, trying to focus on Stover's words. This wasn't good enough for the father. So one by one, he captured and tortured the boys, killing every one of them with a hatchet he'd had in the war, save for one boy he let live. Why the one boy? Nobody knows. After the deed, he came home and hung himself in this very room. Stover laughed like a maniac. Did he find her? Jenny blurted out. Stover shrugged. Nobody knows. The father killed himself before anybody found out. The boy he let live was a nutcase. They have him locked away up in Walton. He's never uttered a word since. That was, quite a story, Matt said. A real bummer, Jenny added. What's it got to do with us? Matt asked. Since it's Father's Day, Stover smiled, I thought we'd try to contact the daughter's spirit with the help of Ember here. Maybe we can find out what happened to her. Really? Matt asked, sarcastically. For sure, Stover replied. Suddenly, Ember tightened her grip on their hands. Without thinking, Matt tightened his grip in response. The girl opened her eyes, making brief contact with him. Suddenly, Matt felt his face become warm, his chest tightened, and he found it hard to breathe. And then it passed. I'm ready, the girl said. Her gaze passed over each and every one of them in turn. It's important to remain in a circle, holding hands. We're safe. You don't want to be pulled away into the spirit world. Ember took a deep breath. I call upon the 4 elements, earth, water, fire, and air. Give me strength. The girl started to rock back and forth. Guide us over the bridge between this world and the next. The candles seemed to flicker briefly as a gust of wind passed through the room. I call upon the spirit of Samantha Swain. A low warbling moan started up from somewhere in the house. Matt felt the hairs on his arms stand up. The air felt charged. There's a presence here, Ember said. There was an unearthly moan. From above the group, a loud bang sounded, making them all jump. Ember warned them, don't break contact. The otherworldly moan grew louder. The house itself creaked and groaned as if in pain. Spirit, speak, Ember commanded. Tell us your name. There was another unearthly wail of pain.
My name is...
A voice spoke.
My name is... Harry Reams.
Stover burst out into laughter. The fuck? Greg looked at the others dumbstruck. Son of a bitch, Matt shook his head. Stover fell backwards, laughing. Oh, I got you, fucks! He wiped a tear from his eye. I had Ernie and Chad help me set it up. Between laughs, Stover told them how he and his 2 buddies rigged the house for sound, so the 2 could provide sounds and spooky voices from a hiding spot upstairs. You son of a bitch, Jenny scolded him. Ember looked around perplexed. No, this isn't right. There was something. I felt it. The others, angered, paid no attention to the girl. Stover called to his buddies. The pair trudged down the stairs laughing loudly at the 3's expense. It's not that funny, assholes, Greg said, dejected. Oh, it is, Chad snickered. Aaron laughed. Should see the looks on your dumb faces. Ember followed the 3 friends as they left the house. Wait, she called after them. I didn't know. There was something wrong. She could feel it. There had been something there with them. Something had slipped into their world. Guys, listen, she pleaded. I didn't know. Matt stepped onto the path before turning around. So you got duped too. Join the club. Please listen. Something did come through. Ember looked into Matt's eyes. Greg and Jenny had already started down the path. Greg turned and called to Matt. Coming, man? I've had enough spooky shit for today. I didn't even want to be here. Matt turned and walked towards his friends. Shit, Ember whispered to herself. Feeling somebody watching her, she turned towards the house. Standing next to the house was a dark figure. Was that Stover? Or one of his pals? Feeling fear creeping up her spine, Ember turned and hurried down the opposite direction of the path. Matt woke in a chair, his eyes blurry. When he tried to move, he realized he was being held in place by duct tape. As his vision focused, he could make out a bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. It swung back and forth, stopping from time to time in mid-swing. Just hanging there. The room appeared to be a basement. Somewhere in the darkness, water dripped, hitting the floor in a steady rhythm. He'd fallen asleep on the couch, watching TV. So how the hell had he gotten here? Before he could call out, he heard the scraping noise coming from the corner of the basement. He strained his neck, turning as far as he could to see a man sitting in the dark corner. The man appeared to be working on something. A red baseball cap covered the man's face in shadow. Matt tried to talk, ask the man what was going on. His mouth moved, but no words came out. The man stood and Matt could make out what the man was working on. In his hands he held a hatchet and a sharpening stone. The man raised his head up. Where his eyes and mouth should be were black holes. Gray mist seeped from the openings.
Have you seen my daughter?
The man asked, his voice garbled and hollow. Matt tried to answer, but still, his voice failed him. The man spoke again.
Have you seen my daughter?
He took one of Matt's hands, prying his fingers free from the arm of the chair. He brought down the hatchet on outstretched fingers and lopped them off. Matt sat up, a scream on his lips. He was on the couch, back at home. Outside, it was dark. His parents should be home soon, which was fine by him. That dream had been too freaky. That man with the hatchet. Was that the guy from Stover's story? Feeling suddenly vulnerable, Matt locked the front door. God, he hoped his parents got home soon. Ember sat in her room. She'd been quiet since getting home. She wanted to tell her folks how scared she was, what she feared had happened, but they wouldn't understand. After supper, she'd gone straight to her room. Ember sat on her bed, hoping she was wrong, and preparing to be right. She ripped sheets of blank paper from a notebook. Pricking her thumb with a pin, she wrote runic symbols on the paper strips. Vael, Drak, Tienen, she repeated, putting a strip up in each corner of her room. Taking a glass jar from her desk, Ember made a circle of salt around her bed, making sure not to break the line when she stepped over it. Sitting cross-legged on her bed, the girl waited. The clock struck 1 a.m. A blue shimmering on the edge of her room woke the girl. A dark figure stood in the corner, pushing against the barrier she had created. Fire, water, earth, and air. Give me strength, she chanted. The spirit strained the barrier as it tried to force its way through. She could make out its features. Black slit eyes on a head covered by a red baseball cap. A hatchet clutched in one of the spirit's hands. Ember continued chanting, till finally, 45 minutes later, the entity left, just as sudden as it had come. Exhausted, Ember fell back on her bed and slept till morning. She'd never been more relieved to see her parents than when she went down for breakfast. The spirit had only come for her last night, for she was the only one that could send it back. At school, something felt off. She looked for the others, but they weren't there. After chemistry, Ember overheard the cheerleaders, Becky, Carly, and Tony Lynn, talking near the stairs. "I heard he never got home last night." "Yeah, his parents are wicked freaked." Working up the courage, Ember approached the two girls. "Who?" she stammered. Becky's eyes narrowed. "What do you want, Freakzilla?" "Who didn't show up?" "What's it to you, Morticia?" Tony smirked. A little angry now, Ember spat out the question. "Who fucking didn't show up?" The girls looked at her a little shocked before answering. "Stover, okay? Take it easy, bitch." Ember walked away without another word. She ditched the rest of her classes for the day. She had to find the other three, to save them from it. Why had she done it? To be popular? Accepted? Screw it. She couldn't sit here feeling sorry for herself. That thing needed to be sent back. When lunch period came, Ember snuck out. Ember found the three sitting outside under a big tree. Did they know? Had they heard about Stover? Out of breath, she walked towards them. Greg was the first to notice her. "Here comes your girlfriend," he said to Matt. "Please, guys, I need your help." Jenny took a bite of her sandwich. "We're not interested," she said dismissively. "Did you hear about Stover?" Greg shrugged. "He didn't show up today. He's always skipping." "He never got home," Ember exclaimed. "It got him. The entity we summoned. The spirit of that girl's father." Greg laughed. "Bullshit. No, it's not. Last night it came for me. I saw its black eyes." Ember almost sobbed. Matt had sat silent as Ember had talked, but he finally spoke up. "Did you say black eyes?" Nervous and a little embarrassed, Matt told them his dream, how real it had felt, and how the description matched with what Ember had seen in her room. "I think you two are both high," Greg joked. "Been hitting the glue? It'll come for us, one by one, because our energy called it and we can send it back. Why do you think Stover is missing?" "I told you, he's just goofing off," Greg said. "I don't know," Jenny said. "Millie said she saw a couple of cops talking to the principal when she passed the office this morning." "I'm not saying I believe in this magic shit," Matt said. "But if it's true, what do we do? We have to go back to the house tonight and send it back." Ember waited by the basketball court on Madison Street, just a little ways from the entrance of the path. She was scared. It was getting dark and that thing could show up at any time. Where the hell were they? Then she heard a familiar voice bitching and moaning and saw them coming down the street. "Why do we all have to go?" Greg asked. Ember and Matt's eyes met, and they shared a little smile. "Well, we're here," Matt said. "Now what?" "We've got to get to the house. There's not much time." They made their way to the house with Greg bitching most of the way and Jenny needling him. Matt nervously looked around. He looked scared to Ember. Good. He'd be on his toes. She'd sensed something about Matt during the summoning. He didn't believe in magic, but still had a healthy respect for it. That energy would be vital for sending it back. His negative charge and her positive should repel the thing. Reaching the house, they flicked on a pair of flashlights. Ember felt relieved when she saw the runic symbols were still on the floor, where she'd drawn them. Taking the same glass jar from her bag, Ember created a circle of salt around the symbols, big enough so they could sit inside it and be protected. Matt and Jenny lit candles, placing one in front of each of them. They all held hands again as they sat there. Ember started to chant, calling upon the elements to aid them. "Fire, water, earth, and air, give us strength." A low rumbling began somewhere in the bowels of the house. The candles flickered as a cold wind blew through the room. A door slammed open and closed in another room, followed by heavy, deliberate footfalls as something approached them. Ember looked at the others. Don't break the circle, no matter what. She rocked back and forth, feeling the energy of the others flowing through her. Vail, Drak, Tienen, send this malignant being back to the Netherrealm from which it came. Jenny screamed, almost bolting from where she sat. Matt and Greg had to keep hold of her. The badly mutilated body of Stover stood in the door frame. The corpse stumbled towards them. Stay calm, Elmer advised them. It can't hurt us. The spirit is trying to scare us. Stover's corpse stopped, inches from the circle, its dead eyes fixed on them. Mission fucking accomplished, Greg said.
Get out of this house.
An unnatural voice commanded from Stover's dead lips. The walls of the room cracked and blistered as a blinding white light emanated from within them. Ember could feel she was losing them to the spectacle going on around them. Focus your thoughts, Ember warned them. Close your eyes, pay it no heed, imagine pushing it away in your mind's eye. Ember closed her eyes, imagining their energy flowing from them like tendrils, striking the malignant evil they'd brought into the world. The floor seemed to fall away. Stopping suddenly, Ember felt the wind expelled from her lungs. Holy shit, Matt gasped. Her eyes flung open, Ember gaped in awe at what she saw. A blue vortex had formed above them. She opened them just in time to see Stover's body pulled into the maw above. The house started to rock as bits of it were pulled into the spinning mass of energy. The floorboards beneath them creaked as the boards strained from the pull of the vortex. Let's get the fuck out of here, Greg hollered. Ember had to agree as the house fell apart around them. The four held hands, forming a chain with Greg in the lead. They inched their way along the hallway. The pull lessened the further they got away from it. When they reached the foyer, they ran from the house, screaming their heads off, not stopping till they reached the path. The four turned and watched in silence as the house came apart until only the vortex remained. It, too, soon disappeared, collapsing in on itself. Fuck me, Greg said, panting. Don't see that every day, Matt added. A couple of weeks later, they were out of school for the summer. Matt was over at Ember's house. The two sat on her bed making out while her parents were at a party. The pair had started dating soon after that night, his infatuation with Jenny a distant memory. Matt came up for air. I wish summer could be like this the whole time. Ember smiled. Who says it can't? Matt had noticed her deck of tarot cards on the nightstand earlier. He took them and started shuffling them. What are you doing? Ember asked. Consulting the cards. Matt smiled as he drew the first card, showing it to her. It was the Lovers. How did you do that? Ember asked. It was easy, he said, drawing another card and handing it to her. Ember looked at it, her eyes wide with terror. The card depicted a collapsing tower. His voice crackled with energy as his eyes turned black.
As easy as finding a new home.
The Spirit of Langley Pond by Charles Campbell.
Summer, 1981. Elena Ann Sanders swam for all she was worth. She could hear the echo of her mother's sentiment in her mind. Don't get into any trouble. Call me if you need me to come get you. No questions asked. Elena wished she had listened to her mother. Instead, it was nearly midnight, and she was swimming for her life to shore. Elena was beginning to think she was going to make it. She was going to see her mother again. The crack of a gunshot was the last sound Elena heard before the darkness of the water claimed her. Langley Pond was going to be her grave. Summer, 2021. Langley Pond had changed quite a bit in the last 40 years. Being billed as the largest pond in North America, it was nearly the size of a lake. No longer were clay mudslides used as makeshift boat ramps. Now, there were full-fledged paved boat ramps descending into the water. There were designated picnic areas spread around the shoreline along with a few cabins that were rented nearly every weekend. It was almost 10 o'clock at night, and the humidity of the day still hung in the air. Brianna Turner glanced at her cell phone. It was 82 degrees. "Ugh, I can't believe how hot it is," Brianna said. She peeled a strand of sweat-stuck hair from her forehead and grinned at her boyfriend, Andy Spires. Andy smiled back and said, "Yeah, it was over 100 today. Thought we might get a little relief by being near the water and all. Guess not. At least we have the cabin with the window unit. That's a plus." "You're right. That's a plus," Brianna agreed. They both turned toward the woods when they heard snapping twigs and shuffling feet. "Hey, Frog, y'all catch anything?" Andy asked when he saw Frog Spradley and his girl of the week, Jenny Coggins, clear the tree line into their sight. "Had a few nibbles, but nothing big. Threw 'em all back," Frog said. Jenny smiled, but she didn't look all that happy to be traipsing through the woods. "Good thing we brought beanie weenies then," Andy said. Jenny gave him the "you can't be serious" look, and Frog replied, "Damn, man, you are a lifesaver. Beanie weenies are the shit. I thought I'd have to break out the Vienna sausages and saltine crackers." "Hey, Jenny, you want to go in the cabin and cool off?" Brianna asked. "Yes," Jenny shouted. It was hot, she was sticky, and if this excursion with Frog taught her anything, she was definitely an inside girl. The boys watched as the girls walked into the cabin. "Okay, Frog, where'd you find that one?" Andy asked. Frog gave him a sneaky smile and sheepishly shrugged his shoulders. "Come on, man. I don't recognize her. She ain't one of your usual valley honeys." "She's from Martinez," Frog whispered. "Why are you whispering? She can't hear us out here. What in the world were you doing in Martinez? And how'd you get her? She looks too sophisticated to be stomping around Langley Pond. Especially with you. The Prince of the Valley. She don't know nothing about the valley, does she?" Andy asked. "Well, she does now. I told her about the Spirit of Langley Pond," Frog replied. "You didn't. And she hasn't left screaming?" "Not yet. Maybe it's because her phone died while we were fishing. She seemed more interested in whatever was on Instagram or Facebook than catching a catfish." Inside the cabin. "Oh my God, that AC feels fantastic," Jenny said and stuck her face in front of the window unit. It was turned all the way up and Jenny's sandy blonde hair blew behind her like she was riding on the back of a motorcycle. "Yeah, it's the only cabin out here with one. Andy sprang for the extra $60. Said it would be worth it to sleep in comfort, and he ain't wrong. It's sticky as hell outside. How long you and Frog been seeing each other?" "Oh, I just met him yesterday." "Where are you from? You ain't from the valley." "Valley? What's the valley?" Jenny asked. "You're in it," Brianna answered and continued. "You know that main road you took to get here? The one that went through a bunch of little bitty towns?" "Yeah," Jenny replied, and turned to face Brianna. Brianna was grinning, and her brown eyes were gleaming. Jenny really paid attention to Brianna for the first time, and she had this country girl pretty thing going for her. She looked like she could be fun in the sack, but could kick your ass out of it if necessary. Well, that road is 421, and 421 is the valley. Rednecks for as far as the eye can see. And you got yourself what we call a valley prince. That right. Why is he a valley prince? He's a Spradley, and Spradleys have been around the valley for as long as anybody can remember. Everybody calls him Frog. I don't even know if that's his given name, but I know his daddy was called Frog and his daddy's daddy was called Frog. They own several businesses in the valley. His brother Ricky owns Valley Video. His other brother, Johnny, owns Spradley's fill-in station in Langley. His sister Darnell, well, she owns a beauty shop in Gloverville named, can you guess? Spradley's Beauty Shop? Jenny asked as she shrugged her shoulders. Yep, nailed it. So if you're from the valley, you know who the Spradleys are. Oh, really? That's good to know. So what do you know about this spirit he was telling me about while we were fishing? He didn't tell you about the Spirit of Langley Pond. Please, tell me he didn't try to scare you with that story. Brianna suppressed a chuckle. He did, and it did freak me out a bit. Is there any truth behind it? From what I've heard, these local legends start with a grain of truth somewhere, and that grain grows and gets exaggerated over the years. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Am I wrong? Should I be afraid of a ghost in the pond? Jenny asked. Brianna smiled and motioned for Jenny to take a seat in the living room. Yeah, I know about the grain that started the story. It was something that really happened about 40 years ago. It went something like this. Summer 1981. It was Friday morning, and Elena bid her mother farewell for the weekend. Her mother's voice issued a lifeline as Elena walked out the door to meet her boyfriend, Dustin Hines. Don't get into any trouble. Call me if you need me to come get you. No questions asked. Elena told her mother not to worry and that she would be home on Sunday night. Hey, babe, Dustin said as Elena hopped into his Ford pickup. She leaned over and gave Dustin a quick kiss before she pounded the dashboard, which meant it was time to burn rubber. Dustin pulled out of the driveway and beelined to Belvedere Clearwater Road. Finally! Elena shouted. She was ready to have a weekend alone with Dustin. They had been talking about it for the better part of 6 months. Elena leaned her head out of the open window to feel the wind in her face. Hey babe, watch out for telephone poles. You don't want to get your head knocked off. It would really, put a damper on the weekend, Dustin said as he tugged on Elena's arm. Okay, I'm just excited, that's all. I know it's just Langley Pond. Just Langley Pond? Just Langley Pond? You know it's the pride of the valley, Dustin said. He looked at Elena with his blue eyes, and he could see her melt, just a little. You're laying it on a little thick there, ain't ya? Everybody knows Richardson's Lake is the pride of the valley, she said, enamored with her man. I beg to differ. You can't put a boat on Richardson's Lake, and I really don't know how they can call that tiny mud puddle a lake anyway. Langley Pond should be a lake. I mean, it's as big as one. Speaking of boats, Elena interrupted, does your daddy still have that John boat at Langley Pond? He does, Dustin smiled. Trolling motor? In the back of the truck, Dustin answered. Sweet, Elena replied. The pair rode in silence for the next 9 minutes. Elena hopped out of the truck as soon as it rolled to a stop just inside the confines of Langley Pond. I can't wait to jump in the water, Elena screamed and shed her clothing as fast as she could, revealing her bathing suit underneath. Dang, girl, you ain't gonna wait for me to put up the tent? Dustin asked the air. Elena was already splashing in the water. Dustin set up the 2-person tent and pulled the trolling motor from the back of the truck. Elena swam to shore when she saw the tent was all set up and the trolling motor was attached to the John boat. Hey babe, we gonna do some night fishing? The bass should be popping top water plugs tonight, Elena said as she took a seat in the lawn chair set outside the tent. I reckon we can do that. Mama packed up some ham sandwiches in the small cooler and I got Pabst in the biggin. I love you, Dustin. Shut up, you do not. You just want me for my money, Dustin joked. The couple ate sandwiches, drank beer, let their food and drink settle before they made clumsy love in the tent. Elena fell asleep with Dustin's arms wrapped around her. She woke up 5 hours later, alone.
Dustin? You outside? Elena asked as she rubbed her eyes and stretched. She shuffled out of the tent and heard the frogs croaking their night tunes. The crickets returned a symphony of their own. Dustin! Where you at? You know you can pee in front of me, Elena shouted. She looked around and was comforted that the truck was still parked in the same spot, so Dustin didn't decide to go on a midnight snack run and leave her out here all alone. But he didn't answer her, and that was a reason for concern until she saw the light from the flashlight out in the middle of the pond. The John boat wasn't there. That sorry sack of potatoes, Elena shouted. Dustin, get your ass back over here and pick me up, she hollered into the night toward the light of the boat. The light flashed in her direction, but the boat didn't move. Don't make me swim out there, Dustin. I swear I will, and I'll make so much noise that no fish is going to bite for the rest of the night. Don't test me. Elena was leaving playful and moving into pissed off. The light flashed in her direction once more, but the boat still did not move. Okay, I'm coming. Elena sloshed into the pond and began swimming toward the boat. The boat still didn't move. The longer she swam, the angrier she became. He better not dare ask for sex the rest of the trip, is what she was thinking. Not even a hand job. The light still shined like a beacon from a lonely lighthouse. Elena was about 30 yards away from the John boat when she realized something was very, very wrong. There was a figure standing in the center of the boat. A figure that was a mite bit shorter than her boyfriend. That was their John boat. But that wasn't Dustin. Elena swam a little closer to see if she could make out who it was standing in the boat, and screamed in horror when she saw what the man was holding in his left hand. It couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of joke. Her mind was telling her someone was just pranking her. The man in the boat swung his left arm up, around, and launched the severed head of Dustin Hines in Elena's direction. She waited what seemed like hours on the sound of the splash, and when the sound came, Elena turned around and swam for all she was worth. Elena felt as if bricks were weighing her down. The burning in her lungs felt like she inhaled lit gasoline. She could hear the echo of her mother's sentiment in her mind. Don't get into any trouble. Call me if you need me to come get you. No questions asked. Elena wished that she had listened to her mother. Instead, she was swimming for her life to shore. Elena was beginning to think she was going to make it. She was going to see her mother again. The crack of a gunshot was the last sound Elena heard before the darkness of the water claimed her. Langley Pond was going to be her grave. Summer, 2021. Jenny's face was flush when Brianna finished the story. Was that true? What you told me? She asked. Pretty much. I don't know if that's exactly how the conversations went down, but the facts are Elena and Dustin went to Langley Pond. Dustin's head was chopped off. They found the body in the boat, and Elena had been shot in the head. It took them a while to find her body, though. Longer than it probably should have. They say her body was in the pond long enough for her spirit to be trapped here. Some people say they can hear splashing around and hollering sometimes. Me, I think it's just the bass having their late-night snacks. They can make quite a ruckus when they're attacking frogs, lizards, and whatnot. I wouldn't let it scare you too much, though. Brianna finished and patted Jenny on her hands. Did they ever catch the guy that did it? Jenny asked. Well, that's the thing. They did. That's how we got this story that's been passed down for 40 years, but he was shot in the head with a long-range rifle as he was escorted to the courthouse. Let's just say the police didn't spend a lot of time looking for the killer of Billie Jean Morris.
From what's been passed down, a lot of folks think it was set up that way. The police can turn a blind eye sometimes when it comes to valley justice, especially when it's a couple of local kids that were killed. Kids that everybody knew. Kids that everybody loved. There were some rumors that it was Elena's daddy or even Dustin's daddy. They were both avid hunters with rifles to do the job. They weren't even questioned. I don't blame either one of them if they killed Billie Jean. He deserved it, Brianna finished. Jenny looked at her in all seriousness and said, "What if Billie Jean didn't kill them? What if someone else did? And what if that someone else is still around?" Jenny asked, clearly working herself up into something that Brianna thought was silly. "Calm down, girl. It was Billie Jean. I know it was Billie Jean. It's a valley thing. You wouldn't understand. Now let's go see what those boys are up to." Frog was grinning from ear to ear as he saw the girls approach. Andy was downing another PBR. "I was beginning to worry about you two. You get your girl talk in?" Frog asked as he grabbed his own PBR. "Yeah, something like that," Brianna replied and winked at Jenny to let her know it was okay. It was just a stupid local legend. Nothing to worry about. "Frog, are we really having beanie weenies for dinner? I mean, I'd rather go to the store and grab some sandwich stuff. Maybe Brianna and I could run to the grocery store real quick. We'll get a bag of ice and some more of that beer y'all like." Frog was all set to disagree and force the beanie weenie supper, but when the B word came up, he changed his course of thinking. "I think that'd be okay. What do you think, Andy? The girls can go get the sandwich stuff and another case of beer. I'll contribute $10 for the cause," Frog said and pulled a crinkled bill from his well-weathered leather wallet. "Yeah, I reckon that'll be okay. Brianna, take her to the Bilo where Jimmy works. He'll let you buy the beer with no ID. Brianna rolled her eyes at Andy like she didn't already know that. She had bought beer at that Bilo since she was 14 years old. The Valley kids knew where to go without being ripped off. There was always the quick shop option where the owner would only sell the swill known as Milwaukee's Best for triple the labeled price to desperate teens. That's the only way he could get rid of the crap, and he had to carry it because it was such an under-the-table moneymaker for him. Any way he can stick it to the government and help raise the next generation of Valley rats, the better for his Valley pride and his pockets. Andy tossed the truck keys to Brianna. "Be careful, babe. Don't wreck my truck and don't get caught with that beer." Brianna gave him another eye roll and trotted to the driver's side. Jenny felt a wave of relief when Brianna started the engine and the cool air from the AC kissed her face. "Andy," Frog said with a wicked grin. "Yeah?" "I had Jenny going pretty good with the Spirit of Langley Pond. You want to have some fun and scare the girls when they get back?" More Jenny than Brianna. I know she's tough to scare. "I don't know, man. That new girl might go off the deep end. I mean, you don't know her all that well, and it'll severely reduce your chances of playing hide the snake, if you catch my drift. It'll be more like a whack-a-mole," Andy replied and smiled. "I don't care," Frog began. "I don't think she's going to give it up anyway. May as well have some fun with her. She's creeped out over the ghost of Elena Sanders." "First, what did you have in mind? And second, if Brianna gets pissed, it's on you," Andy replied. "Look, while they're gone, I'm going to go to the edge of the woods over yonder." Frog pointed to the shoreline at his left. "You see that cluster of trees over there?" "Yeah." "Well, I'm going to go over there behind them trees and start tossing some of the red bricks that Ricky put over in that clearing into the pond. He'll never miss 'em. He done forgot he put them out there. And check this out real quick. Give me a second." Frog ran to his car and Andy could hear him rustling before he came trotting back with a palm-sized speaker. "It's a Bluetooth, man. I'm going to play some Halloween screams out of this bad boy. It works right off my phone. And while you're doing all this shit, where am I supposed to tell them you are? Tell them I went to the other side of the pond to go gigging. Brianna will believe that. She knows how much I love to go gigging. And when she finds out that's a lie, then me and my right hand are going to be best friends for the rest of the trip." "I don't think so," Andy replied. You have to take the fun out of everything, man. Look, I will tell you that I was going gigging, and I'm going to disappear for a little while. Then you won't be lying, and you can act like you're just as pissed as the girls. I suspect I'll be taking Jenny home after this stunt, and you and Brianna will be all alone in the cabin. Frog grinned and poked his finger through the hole he made with his other hand. A smile ran across Andy's face. Now that sounds like a better plan, my man. I know nothing, I see nothing, I hear nothing but the spirit of Elena Ann Sanders splashing and screaming in the water. That's the spirit, Frog replied without realizing the pun. Darkness was closing in on the valley when Andy saw the lights of his truck coming down the path. "They're back!" he shouted, which sent Frog scurrying for the tree line. Brianna and Jenny were still laughing from their conversation on the trip back. "Hey girls, need a hand?" Andy walked toward them. "Where's Frog?" was the first question from Jenny's lips, and Brianna already had her doubting eyes looking around for the mischievous valley prince. "He'll be back directly. He went gigging on the other side of the pond." "What's gigging?" Jenny asked, thinking it was some made-up thing by these valley people. "He went to kill his namesake," Brianna answered. "Gigging is when you basically take a 3-pronged metal spear and go stab frogs with them. Don't worry, though. Frog isn't killing them entirely for fun. He'll cut the legs off and fry them up." "Ew! He's going to eat their legs?" Jenny couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Yeah, I'll probably eat some too. Andy, though, he's not much on frog legs, are you, babe?" Brianna asked. "Y'all can have that. If I eat a fried leg, it better have belonged to a chicken, that's all I'll say." "Did he say when he's coming back?" Jenny asked. "Well, with Frog you never can tell. If he starts sticking them left and right, it might be a while, but if he can't catch them, then he might not be gone so long." "Is he good at catching them?" Jenny asked. "Best in the valley," Brianna replied. "Oh," Jenny said. She thought that was a hell of a way to treat your date. Send her off to get your beer while you go kill frogs around the pond. Jenny made up her mind that Frog would have to take her home as soon as he got back. "Here's your beer," Brianna said, and pulled the case from the bed of the pickup. "It's still cold. Jenny and I are going to make ourselves a couple of sandwiches. You want a ham and cheese?" "You know I do. Can you bring it back out here? I'm going to start a fire in the pit." "It's 80-something degrees out, Andy. Do you really want to make it any hotter?" "I like to see the people in the flames, babe. I won't keep it lit all night." "Alrighty then, go see your flame people. Come on, Jenny, I'm starving." The girls went into the cabin. Andy lit up the fire pit and waited to hear the first splash. Brianna came out 10 minutes later with Andy's sandwich wrapped in a paper towel. "Did Frog really go gigging?" Brianna asked. Andy truthfully answered. "That's where he told me he was going, but you never know with Frog." He added that just to cover his ass for when the shit went down. "All right, it's pretty dark out here now. You coming in soon?" "Yeah, I'll be in a little bit. I was trying to wait on Frog to get back. I'm surprised he didn't come running when he heard the beer truck," Andy said, already thinking of how fake mad he was going to be with Frog when the prank unfolded. Andy wondered if Frog would let him get a punch in just to completely exonerate himself from any involvement in his childish ploy. "Just put that fire out before you come in. We don't want to be the ones to burn down the cabins." "Roger that," Andy smiled and pursed his lips for a kiss. Brianna gave him a quick peck. 15 minutes passed and there was no splash, no sound from the area in which Frog disappeared. Andy was getting a little antsy as he stood from his chair, took another gulp of PBR, and turned toward the cabin. He could see the outline of the girls standing near the AC unit. Andy began walking toward the cabin when the first splash finally came. "Ah, so it begins," Andy thought to himself. The girls didn't hear it, or if they did, it wasn't enough ruckus yet to make them come outside. Then there was a second splash, much louder than the first. He saw Brianna's head turn, but she didn't come outside. I guess third time's a charm, is what Andy thought. The third splash came, and it was much louder than the first two. This time, he saw Brianna move toward the door. Then came the scream. It was loud, shrill, and brief. Almost inhuman. It was a scream of severe pain. Brianna came bursting out the door. "All right, Andy, tell Frog to cut the shit. Jenny's freaking the hell out in there. She's afraid to come out." "Frog, cut the shit!" Brianna hollered in the direction of the commotion. There were more splashes. They got louder and closer. Louder and closer. Then, the second scream. It was so loud, Andy was thinking that was one hell of a speaker Frog had brought. Andy and Brianna heard running, and it was coming toward them, very quickly. Frog emerged from the darkness, and his face was white as a sheet. "Frog, you son of a Brianna began and then stopped. Her heart felt like it was going ba-boom out of her chest when she heard the next scream. This was no Bluetooth speaker. This was menacing and so full of pain. "Damn, Frog, how are you doing that?" Andy asked, still not getting it, actually impressed with his friend's skill. "It's not me, Andy. It's Elena. And I pissed her off." "Stop it, Frog. Take me home. I'm done with this shit," Jenny yelled. Her entire body was shaking. The poor girl was scared out of her mind. "I think we all need to leave," Andy said as he realized his buddy wasn't joking. Andy kept calm. "Let's just go. We'll come clean up our crap in the morning." There was another tremendous splash, and it was closer than any of the others. The rhythm was almost like thunder followed by lightning. A few seconds after the splash, the screech came. It was a sound of unmitigated pain. The four of them froze in place, and their mouths fell open, almost in unison, at what they saw next. The apparition of Elena was floating above the water just past the shoreline. The front of her head was busted wide open, and her eyes were contorted black pools that looked in opposite directions. She fell into the water with a loud kersplash, and slowly rose again. Her mouth opened wide, and this time the scream pierced them. The eardrums of all four of them were on the verge of exploding in their skulls. Hands went to cover ears on instinct, but it didn't matter. This scream moved through flesh and bone, through space and time. This was the scream of the dead trapped in her watery grave. It was a macabre dance of the dead in which Elena was forever trapped. Jenny was the first to speak when the screaming stopped. "She's not going to let us leave." Brianna looked at Andy, and they felt the same apprehension that Jenny spoke aloud. But Andy simply said, "Let's get the hell out of here." Andy and Brianna ran to the truck while Frog and Jenny ran to Frog's Mustang. Andy turned the key and heard the clicking sound associated with a dead battery. Frog did the same. Jenny was shaking in her seat. Brianna was already thinking that they would just book it to 421 on foot. It wasn't that far away, and once they were on that stretch of road, they would be home free. The wind suddenly picked up and the temperature dropped. The four of them got out of the vehicles and moved closer to one another. Brianna wanted to scream, wanted to tell them to run, but something in her gut warned her that would be a big mistake. Jenny's lips were quivering with fear, and Frog didn't look like a prince at all. For the first time in his life, Frog truly felt fear rush up his spine. The calmness that Andy displayed just moments before was replaced with a feeling of despair. They all felt like Brianna, felt as if they should run, but couldn't. Not that anyone or anything was stopping them, but it just felt like a very bad idea. There was another screech, and the four of them turned toward the pond. The apparition was floating above the water just at the shoreline. Her dark hair was flowing behind her, and she wasn't falling this time. Her mouth was contorted as if she were about to release another screech, but this time, she didn't. The spirit of Elena looked directly at Frog with a face of recognition. The spirit began shaking above the water. "What the fuck, Frog?" Andy whispered. I don't know, man," Frog whispered back. She's pointing at you," Jenny said on the verge of sobbing. "No, she's not. She's pointing at us. She don't want us to be here, and I think we should give her what she wants," Frog whispered back. Andy, Jenny, and Brianna slowly stepped away from Frog. Elena's spirit kept pointing to the Valley Prince. It was recognition, and it wasn't coincidence. "What the hell, man? What did I ever do to her?" "I don't know, man, but I wouldn't make any sudden movements if I were you." Summer, 1981. He had seen Elena come in his store through the years. He longed for her, but she was taken. Dustin Hines was her man, and it didn't sit well with him. Not one bit. He heard it through the grapevine that they were going to Langley Pond for a romantic getaway this weekend, and today was Friday. Elena wouldn't give him the time of day, would barely utter a word when she came in to pick out a movie. Sometimes Dustin would be with her. She would come in with her beautiful long black hair and perfect smile, teasing him. Elena had to know that he was in love with her, but she would come in with Dustin flaunting her love for him and, in a sense, a disdain for Frog Spradley. He didn't understand why. Valley Video was going to be his outright in another year. He would be a reputable business owner. Frog was sure that the video rental business would be a necessity for generations to come. But she would come and go, tease him, taunt him, show him what he can't have, show him who was getting her love. This wasn't going to work for Frog. He would be at that pond tonight, just like the song said. Bang, bang, he shot me down. Bang, bang, I hit the ground. Bang, bang, that awful sound. Bang, bang, my baby shot me down. And that's exactly what Frog would do. He would go to the pond. He would hear them making love in the tent. He would take his machete and get Dustin to come outside while Elena was sleeping. He'd hack him up and chop off his head. He'd take the John boat out late. He heard them talking about their late-night fishing trip. She would come out. She would see the light. She would think that her lover was fishing without her. She'd see the man that she scorned. See what she could have had. He would toss the head of her betrothed. She would see him. All she had to do was keep swimming to the boat, and she would have lived. But she turned and swam away, afraid of the man that was truly meant for her. He'd line her up with his deer rifle. Frog was a dead shot. He wasn't going to miss. He'd let her feel as if she may get away before the shot would zip through the back of her skull. It was pure luck that they pinned it on Billie Jean. He always had a short fuse, and that was all very well and good with Frog. He'd find another love, one that would love him. They'd have a baby boy, and he would keep the name of Frog alive. Frog was the spitting image of his father and his grandfather. He'd grow up as a Valley Prince. Frog Sr. wouldn't think of Elena again until he took his final breath in 2015, when the song floated through his mind for the first time since that day. Bang, bang, he shot me down. Bang, bang, I hit the ground. Bang, bang, that awful sound. Bang, bang, my baby shot me down. Frog died with his loved ones around him and tears in his eyes. His family didn't know. The tears weren't for them, but for Elena, the spirit of Langley Pond. Summer, 2021. The specter was transfixed on Frog, and he was in turn locked onto her lifeless eyes. Her mouth curled in pain, and it was as if she were the one seeing a ghost. Frog couldn't move. It was as if he were stuck knees deep in mud, and the air around him was infused with a coldness that chilled him to his soul. The spirit of Langley Pond seemed to know him, and she didn't seem all that thrilled that he was looking at her. "Oh my God!" Brianna screamed in Frog's direction. "She knows you!" Andy turned away from the ghost and saw the angst in Frog's face before he said, "That's impossible. There's no way she knows Frog." The ghost floated closer to them and seemed to put her feet on the ground. The entire shoreline got much colder, and the others felt it. Everyone was stuck in their spot, afraid to make any sudden movement. The four of them formed somewhat of a straight line, and they all faced the spirit of Elena, but that spirit was only focused on one of them. And she changed. The life came back into her eyes. They turned from black pools to light brown. The distortion in her face also melted away. The ghostly apparition that the four of them witnessed floating above the pond changed into healed flesh and blood. She no longer floated but walked toward Frog. He managed to utter the first words to break the silence. Hey, look, what do you want from us?" The young woman smiled at him and held out her hands. Frog wanted to believe this was just a dream, that he had drank 5 too many PBRs and would wake up any minute, but he knew that he was in the here and now. "Take my hand. You were there. You killed my boyfriend. You chopped off his head. And you shot me," Elena said and continued. "Take my hand so I can leave this God-forsaken place." Frog trembled. His brain was trying to fight the overwhelming compulsion to grab Elena's hand. If he did, he thought it might be the last thing that he ever did. Brianna found her courage and spoke. "Elena!" The girl turned to face her. "He couldn't have killed your boyfriend or you. Please, just listen to me." Elena placed her hands at her side and gave Brianna a sense of relief. She was going to listen to her. Good. Look, the year is 2021. You were killed in 1981 by Billie Jean Morris. It was in all the papers. My mama told me about it. The whole town knew it was Billie Jean. He was shot dead, Elena. They got the man that killed you and your boyfriend." Elena turned her attention away from Frog for just a moment and walked to Brianna. Jenny ran to Andy and stuck her head in the crook of his arm like she was trying to shield herself from seeing a kill in a horror movie. Elena walked toward Brianna. She seemed to admire the beauty of the girl. They were close to the same age. "Billie Jean Morris did not kill me. Billie Jean Morris never talked to me. I know who I saw, and it was his face," she said, and pointed back at Frog. "Shit, woman, I wasn't even born yet! Please!" Frog pleaded. "It was him," Elena said, and started to turn away from Brianna. Brianna lunged forward and grabbed Elena around her wrist. She was surprised that she didn't pass through her. Brianna really had a grip on the young woman. Elena spun around in Brianna's backwards hug like a slippery eel and placed her hands on Brianna's head. The memory of that night and her death filled Brianna's mind in what felt like a wave of electricity. Brianna blinked rapidly. Andy pushed Jenny away and started to run toward his girlfriend. "No!" Brianna screamed. "Stop!" Andy stopped in his tracks. Elena looked into Brianna's eyes, looking for understanding. "You see, it was him. You see that now, right?" Elena broke Brianna's grip around her waist and turned back to Frog. "What the hell, man? I wasn't even on the planet then!" "It was his daddy," Brianna shouted. This made Elena pause. "It is 2021. His daddy's name was Frog and his name is Frog. He looks just like his daddy. He didn't have anything to do with it. Andy rushed to his girlfriend's side, and Jenny was right behind him. The three of them stood together. Frog was still frozen in place. Elena moved closer to Frog. She could see the man that chopped off Dustin's head. She could almost feel the bullet break open the back of her skull all over again. He put his hands out in front of him, hoping this would keep her at arm's length. She touched his hand, and it was colder than anything he had ever felt in his young life. You have his blood, and a penance has to be paid, Elena said as she grabbed the Valley Prince by the hand. I will not stay here any longer. I was waiting on him to return, and he never did. But his son will do. You carry the blood of the man that killed me. You should have never been born, Elena said, and pulled Frog closer to her. Brianna and Andy started to run toward them. Jenny was a blubbering mess. To save their friend, but it was too late. Elena had a firm grip on both of Frog's arms, and she morphed back into the specter. Frog was lifted straight up into the sky, his legs kicking and his lungs screaming into the night. Brianna and Andy shouted Frog's name as he disappeared into the sky. His screams went silent. Andy and Brianna looked at one another, waiting for another sound, another sign of life from the Valley Prince. What they heard in the far distance of the pond was a splash, a cackle, and then silence. The spirit of Elena Ann Sanders was now free. It was replaced by the son of the man that killed her and Dustin. This would be the penance that set her free. Brianna, Andy, and Jenny would never be able to explain what they witnessed. They just said Frog went giggin' and never came back. What else could they say?
And there you have it, my spookies. 6 ghostly tales to carry us through the quiet after Halloween. The marigolds will fade, the candles will go out, but the spirits never really leave, do they? No, they just get hungry. And speaking of hunger, Monday on Terrifying and True, we're diving deep into one of the darkest chapters of American history. A story of desperation, madness, and survival against the frozen unknown. We'll be covering the Donner Party. And trust me, my friends, you'll want to eat before you listen. So, until then, keep your candles burning, your windows closed tight, and remember, here at Weekly Spooky, the stories may end, but the spirits never go anywhere. Make sure you subscribe. It might just save your life.